Hello and salutations. It's me, Sal. Welcome back to 2 Cents Toys for episode 7 of The Way I Played, and tonight I'm joined by one of my very best friends, Michael French of Retroblasting. You may have heard of him. It's such a privilege for me to allow another channel to have. I can't even finish that. Okay.
No, what's funny is that recently I had to in a small way have the very same conversation in reverse, because somebody that I had given like a shout out to or something, they had gotten like a big boost, and I was like, they were very thankful for all that. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, like, you don't realize what a big deal that is. And I was like, I don't. So it's funny when you joke about stuff like that it's like, I'm just a guy. Like I'm going into the empty toy aisles with everybody else and disappointed and walking out again, and then pre-ordering on Big Bad Toy Store and waiting 8 months for things that Big Bad never seems to get. Like, I just got a notification today that this is the second time I've gotten this notification in a month that Amazon is shipping my Playmobil Back to the Future 3 advent calendar. And it's like, well, I hope this time it actually arrives, because the last time it was 10 stops away, and then they said, oh, this whole item's been delayed, so we'll let you know when it ships. So it's like, yeah, no freebies here. I'm rambling. So hi, Sal.
Hello. But
hi.
Let's not be too modest, Michael. I have it on good authority that the collection room smells of rich mahogany, and you have many leather-bound DVDs.
Yeah, my cologne of choice is wood grain. Like, yes. Yeah.
It's very important.
People know me.
Just hello to everyone in the chat. We have Melinda M. That sounds familiar. Michael Schaefer, Dean from All Things 80s, Grindhead, Chris Miwa. We have K Slater 23, a new name I've not seen before, so welcome. Jim the Ripper. Sorry, I almost said Jim the Reaper. I have Blue Oyster Cult on the brain, I guess. Jason Anderson's here. Keith Knight. All the usual suspects, as I like to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Thomas wants us to know that he will be listening, but he'll chat as he's able to, because he's driving at the moment.
Right.
I won't tell your insurance company, Thomas. Your secret is safe with me. So, for those unfamiliar with how the show works, it's pretty much a very low impact stream where it's two people. We just talk about toy memories, playtime, all the fun stuff. Basically, very very laid back, very relaxed. Now, Michael has made no secret of most of the questions I ask. It's all public knowledge already, but we'll kind of breeze through and we'll let the conversation go as it goes. So, before all that, we have some upstanding gentleman named Analog Toys who sends in a super chat. Thank you for that. He says, "Who are these handsome men?" I'm like, well, there are several here.
I was seeing that myself. I was trying to remember the name of the gentleman who is the martial arts master in Chuck Norris on the right. I should know this because I did a whole video on it, but I'm coming up blank because I'm trying to force myself to remember.
Well, as luck would have it, this is actually from my childhood. And I don't know his name either. So
I'm gonna have to like either go to my own video or because I'm gonna figure this out. Chuck Norris, Karate Commandos, and his name
it's probably Bushido or something. Or
okay, let's see, Kenner, and we're gonna go to action figures and comics. Let's see, Figure Realm. That's the one I want.
Melinda says Samurai Sam.
His name is Chemo, not to be confused with CHMEO. His name is Chemo, KIMO.
Interesting.
So, yep.
Yeah, a work friend of my mom when I was like 10 gave him to me.
Yeah, I mean he looks like he's in good cosmetic condition too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not bad. Let me See if I can move. No, I got these little guts guys kind of
Oh
braced
yeah,
up
yeah,
against it.
yeah. He looks great though. I like how Magneto is holding up the boss card back. He's
Oh
like,
yeah,
he's like the Vanna White. He's
yeah.
like,
One of those old Bendums.
oh, so he is a Bendum.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, him and the Punisher. And surprised, like they're not cracked or anything, but you can
Yeah.
tell I really didn't play with them
Oh
based
yeah.
on that.
What I
So
mean, what can you really do with those? What a misfire that was.
yeah,
Yeah.
because these were contemporary with the other ones, with the bending knees and elbows, and it's
Yep.
like, well, why would I play with this?
Yeah. That was back in the 90s, that time in the 90s when anybody could sell anything. It
Hmm.
was like, we're going to create a company called Bendums, even though there are action figures that are better for $1 more. And we're going to sell these right alongside Pogs.
Yep.
And it's like, Pogs are never going to work. And they sure did for about 18 months.
Yep. We're gonna sell these kids paper discs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be great.
It'll be awesome. Oh,
I had a
yeah.
ton of Pogs as a kid. I had to have been maybe 3 when
Uh-huh.
Pogs came out, and I had a bunch of them. And it's one of those things I don't ever remember asking for them. I just got them,
Uh-huh.
and to this day, it's the information's out there. I just elect not to look it up because I want to remain in mystery. I don't know how to play the game.
I don't
I
either.
understand you put them in a stack and you have a plastic one called a slammer, but I don't know physically how it's played.
Yeah.
It sounds very similar to marbles to me.
I don't know how to play Pogs. I remember buying at the comic shop in the 90s, they came out with a Spider-Man themed Pog set that came on like a cardstock thing and you punched the Pogs out, but it was in, cellophane, it was in shrink wrap. And so back then in the 90s, you thought, well, everything I'll keep carded or I'll keep in a, bag and board or whatever. So I never opened them. So I never actually learned how to play Pogs. I just, in the traditional 90s fashion, I bought it because it had Spider-Man on it. And I thought that was enough. And then finally, 25 years later, I just gave it away because it was worth pennies. So
pretty much. That's I had several at various school functions, like, oh, this is they have the Halloween party or whatever, and they would just give out Pogs and be like, oh, I had like, I don't know, really weird ones, but at one point they started like putting engravings in them to where like that, and then they were turned into like bookmarks and things. It was really, really bizarre.
I would love to find out if Pog or Pogs, I don't know which, is a dead trademark at this point, and then go register it myself and actually create something useful with the name Pogs.
Let's see.
Like a shovel that, I don't know, that was a bad example. Something useful, like something really useful, like an innovative, longer lasting light bulb or and it's like the Pogs bulb. And people are like, why is it called Pogs? It's like, because somebody wanted to do something useful with that trademark.
Right. Well, now when I see it, I hear Pogue, and I'm like, that's the only acronym I can think of. But personnel people other than Grunt. Scuba Pete, this abstaining gentleman, sends another super chat. He says he loves this format. Rock on, Sal and Michael. He was on. I want to say he was on the 3rd episode. Or maybe that might have been Matt Swafford, but another upstanding gentleman. We had a great time.
Yep, I remember watching that one. That was cool.
Yep. And oh goodness gracious, Tony. He says sending this on proviso so you can spend the money on caffeine. Well, sir, as luck would have it, I have a big old cup of go-go juice right now. So with my some kind of convention or other, I don't know. I
heard about that convention. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I heard for people that showed up.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I think I found it at Goodwill or something.
Yeah, that's where a lot of that trendy convention swag ends up, I guess.
Let's see. So let's go ahead and jump in. We'll knock out these questions because they're all things that you've answered before.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and just breeze through them, and we'll just relax, I guess. So I'm sorry, before we do anything else, I know we were making light of it, but for those who may not know, because I can only think of one subscriber of mine who may not know who you are, but he doesn't even watch the channel anyway. But just go ahead and tell them a little bit about Retroblasting and where they can find you.
Sure. Retroblasting is we're a web store for reclaimed socks, and we redarn them and then recirculate them. Really trying to get them into the hands of people who don't believe in socks, which I find sort of repugnant, especially given that now people are wearing dress shoes with dress suits and they want to show their ankles off, which is inhuman. And I don't know what that's all about, but we're trying to change it back to a more traditional way of dress. And so we're really looking for those darn socks. We came out with a bad name at first. We called it Retroblasting. It was kind of a dumb choice because we found our purpose now, and it's with yarn. No. My channel is about the Generation X experience. So it's everything from Jaws to Jurassic Park. Although some members of Gen X would say that it goes farther back than that, of course, and they would be correct. This is kind of about what some people have defined my age group. I was born in 78. Some people have actually said that's a micro generation called the Oregon Trail generation. I don't really buy into that, but the experience of, say, a mid to late 70s child is from Jaws to Jurassic Park. And we do break those boundaries every now and then. We'll go a little bit back farther, a little bit forward. Like, for example, I'm simultaneously planning a Mighty Morphing Power Rangers retrospective at the same time, which is technically 93, at the same time that I'm working on a Robin Hood retrospective, which goes all the way back to the 13th century. So yeah, when we think it's appropriate, we'll break those boundaries a little bit. Some people mistake us for being purely an 80s channel, and that's never been our mission statement. So,
Indeed.
And we're on YouTube. So
yeah. YouTube. What is YouTube? No.
YouTube is a platform that was designed for people to allow themselves full access to bias reinforcement and then yell at people in comments that don't agree with their very specific biases, while assuming that because they watch your channel, they know you, and therefore you should know them and all of their unspoken interests, even though they hide under a fake avatar with a name like, Skateboarding Doggy 24. So there's no way to really win that battle.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
My favorite are the ones that are like bigger than Jesus 98.
Yeah, right.
Or people who get their information from comment sections.
Yes.
Any hooser. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Prey Home Companion. Connor Fuller has a super chat for us, which is actually one of the questions I normally ask. He says, was there a toy, figure, or playset that either of you had that you had no idea what line it was from, but you loved it? Michael, I'll allow you to take that one.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to grab him right here and show him to everybody.
Okay. Which means it's time to take a drink of coffee. For those that watch the Saturday live streams, they're in on that joke.
So at Showbiz Pizza Place in 1983, which is my best guess, I won a bunch of skee ball tickets, or I guess probably my dad did or something. Or we won just enough skee ball tickets, and then he supplemented a buck in either direction. And I walked away with what I've now learned is a Galaxy Warriors Dino Man. And he was he was part of that line that was chasing the He-Man fad at the time. He had a hand weapon. It's long since gone. I'm lucky to have his armor and shield left.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea of a Tyrannosaurus Rex headed dude with a Mr. T Mohawk was too exciting to pass up.
Absolutely.
And also, unlike vintage He-Man figures, he has fixed legs, so he doesn't have any rubber bands that have to be replaced. He is solid as a rock.
So he's immediately superior.
He's immediately superior. And I never knew what he was actually from, but I assumed there wasn't ever a cartoon for him, which I was then proven right in adulthood. But he was just like this rogue character that would just, jump out stage left and then whoop on, Mechaneck or something, and then he would run off again. I find him to be an excellent ambassador. I mean, look at that. That's the face of justice right there.
Absolutely. And Jason Anderson has me cracking up. He says he looks like the baby from Eraserhead all grown up. And talk about a weird movie. Goodness gracious. I was not prepared for that movie the first time I saw it. And I was left with, what the hell did I just watch?
Now, Melinda is mentioning a robot toy I got as a kid. Now I'm trying to remember what she's referring to. Robot toy I got as a kid. Oh, you're talking about that Ditarn 3? Okay, so if I turn my camera and then I point.
Okay. Not sure how that happened.
What happened?
I don't know. All of a sudden I was just kind of bumped out of the stream.
This robot right here, you can see standing in the case. He was a random gift that I was given, and that apparently has a show in Japan, but it was never translated over here. But the robots were imported to sell as toys in like the Christmas of '84, and I was given it by an aunt, and I've still got him, and he's right there. I never could figure out how to adequately play with him. Yep,
absolutely. I love those. Now, I have a theory on what happened. I have the magic mouse, quote unquote, from Macintosh. And I think I was scrolling up through the chat and I went left instead of right, and it went
right
and went back a page. Regardless of that, to answer your question, Connor, like 98% of these are things I don't know. So a lot of my toys I got, like, even though like it said G.I. Joe, like, who's General Flag? I don't know, kind of thing. So just here on the table, like Punisher, Magneto, Dinobot, Bosk, and like, well, this is technically Albert, not Wolverine, but like those would be the only ones from here from my childhood that I actually knew who they were. Everyone else like, oh, like I've mentioned a couple times on my channel that to me the Core and G.I. Joe were the same thing. G.I. Joe was a style of figure, not a brand. So, but just to answer his question, like most toys I got as a kid, I didn't know what they were from. It was just a really cool toy.
I just had a childhood toy. Oh man, Jody. We are working on a solution for that. It does involve spotlights, some barbed wire, and a perimeter,
and a very determined basset hound.
Yeah, I'm actually considering coming up with a Colditz Castle for socks, because the troublemakers that always get away, you need to put them somewhere where they really can't escape. And so I'm coming up with a Colditz Castle for socks. It's going to be great. I'm going to put it on QVC. It's going to be awesome.
Laser Pants has a slight correction to your YouTube commentary. He says it was rollerblading Jackass 69, actually.
Yeah.
Yay.
Oh man. I had a toy. Oh, you have I guess there's another super chat.
Oh yeah. Jody sends in another one. Thank you for both these, Jody. He says just cuz. Oh, there's another one. Daniel Dorian says, question for Sir Michael. He says, is there going to be a follow-up to the Bionic 6 video as well as a retrospective on the Kenner Robin Hood?
Yes, there's going to be a follow-up to Bionic 6. Very, very much so. I'm hoping to have that done in October. It's not a very big toy line, but I finally completed the one piece I needed back in late July, I think. So I finally have that ready to go. That was the delay for it. And then I was just trying to clear my docket of other scripts that I have piling up that are collecting all kinds of dust. So yeah. And I see that Tim put the two figures away during the live stream yesterday when we cleared, or on Saturday when we cleared the table. So now I'm over-indexing on that. So yeah, we will be doing a Bionic 6 video for sure. And then there will be a retrospective part 1, part 2 on Prince of Thieves. That is absolutely happening. So yes, I've already done a lot of work on it. I can't tell you what that work is because it would give everything away. But if you happen to know Bobby Vala at Valaverse, he has seen some of the work that I've done ahead of the Prince of Thieves retrospective. So he can give a nod to the amount of effort I've put into that. So.
Just so everyone is aware,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Michael does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. He puts in a lot of hours. Like, I work a night shift, and there are times where this man should be in bed, and he's texting, and I'll wake up to messages that he sent like very early, so he gets very little sleep. And all that is to say that everything he does for you. With that, man of action, Hawk. He says, Hawk from Adventure People. You talked about this gentleman, sir, right here. Just for my own clarification.
And also, Analog Toys had a $5 super chat up above a little higher. He says,
"Oh my goodness, I missed it. There it is. Thank you.
No problem."
Says, "Is that Baby Huey, Master of Anti-Repro?" Yes.
Speaking of, while we're on the subject, you asked me about childhood figures. You know, like Dino Man here.
Yes, sir.
I had a childhood figure redemption the other day. I'm going to be doing a video about this little innovation, hopefully next week. But one of my favorite action figures, this will be no shock to anybody, was any version of Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
And the original Luke Skywalker, for all of you out there who are in the know, he couldn't actually hold anything because his one arm was just his lightsaber up his arm. There was a Etsy seller called Trash Compactor. He's a maker, and I got him right here. He made a special vintage blaster that goes in Luke's right hand. So if you look here,
oh wow,
and it pins in as if it was a lightsaber, but then it's molded to look like it's sitting in his hand, which is awesome. And you don't need any glue or anything. It just pegs right in there, just like the lightsaber did. And then you'll notice that he has made the Stormtrooper belts for them as well, so that you can put the Stormtrooper belts on them and have them in the Death Star. And the Stormtrooper belt even has a holster, which I've put his lightsaber in temporarily so I don't lose it, because that's his original childhood lightsaber. But I was just over the moon by that innovation. I was like, man, that's cool. So I'm really excited about that. I wish I'd had that as a kid.
And, you know, just to coin a phrase, the fans are doing the best work.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, go ahead, slap a TM on that one.
Yeah, they really are. Like, they really are.
Like, you could have said, oh, he makes a blaster. I'm like, oh, cool. But then he does the belt, and now there's a holster. Like, it just...
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good Lord. I find myself falling into that as well. Like, when I start to make something, I'm like, okay, I'm only going to do this. And then like, well, let me add this. Okay, let me add that. Like, when I did the Luke with the offhand, in that video, I'm like, well, I'm only going to do this. No, let me do that. And I even say, I'm like, this is where I get caught up in myself when I keep trying to push that envelope a little bit to see what I can get away with. That I mess something up. And I'm like,
yep.
But M Vargo 97, he said, thank you for the super chat. He says, because I like seeing 90 Joes on screen. I will champion 90 Joes to the end of time.
My favorite, is he not? Is Big Ben 90s or is he 89?
Oh, Big Ben. The old Tony Roberts, as we like to say.
That's right.
He's, oh gosh, I want to say he might be 89. I'd have to look him up. Like, I can see the figure in my head, but I want to say he's 89, possibly 90. But let's see really quick, just because it's going to drive me nuts. Okay. He came out in 1991.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I'm just checking something. Tim is I'm just checking something. Tim is always very anal retentive about my Bionic 6 figures, but I just wanted to make sure that he treated them with respect. So these are the ones that were on the table yesterday, and so I was just checking them out. All right, so Big Ben was from 1991. Gimmicks toy. Did we already see that one? Uh-oh, Tim misplaced figures again. Oh man, is he going to be in trouble? Did you already read that one while I was like grabbing Luke or something?
No, oh goodness, I think it did that jump thing on me.
Yeah, no problem. That's why we're both here. We're a team. We're all part of the same team.
That's right. Jody sends in another super chat. Thank you, sir. By the way, Jody, I almost put the other Dinobot on this table, but he was so big compared to everything else, I just went with the other one that you sent me. He says, "Uh-oh, Tim misplaced figures again. Oh man, is he in trouble?" Just kidding. Just kidding. So,
I'm going to grab Big Ben off the deck of the flag so that everybody can see he looks just like Tony Roberts from Analog Toys.
He does. It's eerily similar. So, and before anyone asks, yes, I've considered tracking down that figure and repainting it because he has a face paint and a hat. I'm trying to figure out a way to make him into a Tony. There he is.
I'm trying to get him to focus. It's hard with this camera. It's kind of crap.
Yeah. If I knew where mine was, I would go grab him.
I'm definitely going to try and buy a desert rat and convert him into Big Ben. So
I'm going to buy several desert rats.
Oh yeah, I'm buying several as well because I have to have one where Luke unmasks Darth Vader and it's actually Tony.
Oh. Let's see. Okay. Grindhead Jim sends in a super chat. He says, "Thank you, by the way." He says, "So Prince of Thieves comes out after Friday."
Prince of Thieves comes out hopefully before the end of the year because I very much want to do it. I want to do Batman the Animated Series, Prince of Thieves, and the Redux of Thundercats. All of those are 2-parters. And that's a tall order given that we've only got 3 months until the end of 2021. But I'd like to try and fit in those if I can. I'll probably slip here and there a little bit. But Prince of Thieves, that's the one I really want to do, but it's the one nobody else wants. So they want Batman and they want Batman. So I'm not deaf to that. If I have to, I'll push Prince of Thieves to like January or something. But I really want to do that retrospective. So it's more interesting than people give it credit for as a toy line and a piece of pop culture history. So
absolutely. Yeah, Michael Shaver actually makes an observation. He says Desert Rat kind of looks a lot like Tony.
Yeah, that was a weird coincidence, and I'm glad I'm not the only one to have noticed that.
Yeah, it's a very coinkydink, as one might say. So, all right. So let's see here. So we kind of covered that already. Covered that. Here's now this is kind of a brain buster, and I really should have sent you this before beforehand so you could prepare. Is there anything left from your childhood, Michael?
Oh, Melinda probably wishes it were less. Yes, there's a lot left from my childhood. So if you're looking, let me move this chair. That made it worse. Hold on. If you're looking down in the lower right corner of my screen, facing it, you can see that Panache Place Voltron. All the pilots with all their helmets are in it. It has all of its accessories. That is mine from when I was a child. The Jetfire right above my head in the case, along with the Optimus, a number of the Transformers, not all of them. The Soundwave, those, and a Skywarp in there. Those are all childhood. A number of the Dinobots are childhood. All the Thrust Seeker Jet in that second thing, and one of the Insecticons is childhood. A lot of the Star Wars behind me on the other side, on this side, is childhood. That B-Wing is childhood. The Y-Wing is childhood. The Jabba, the Rancor, number of the figures are childhood. That's my childhood X-Wing right there, the battle damaged one. There's a lot of childhood stuff in here, and it's hard to pin it all down. So that Millennium Falcon is my childhood Falcon. That Ewok Village up here, and that Scout Walker childhood. Like I said, more of those figures are. Oh gosh, let's see. A lot of that actually, surprisingly, is not childhood because I didn't have, except for the figures. That Death Star playset is actually childhood. So shocker and surprise there. But there's a lot of childhood stuff in here. It made up the foundation of how I ended up being able to collect like this. All of those vehicles up on the Masters of the Universe shelf above my head are my brother's childhood vehicles and beasts. So yeah, a lot of it. Oh, and then most of those Thundercats down there are childhood Thundercats of my brother's. Some of those mask vehicles on Boulder Hill are childhood. So, and all of those figures up next to the Falcon and inside the Death Star are either my childhood ones or Stan Solo. So
nice.
Yeah.
No,
that's just a sample. But wait, there's more. You know, there's a lot here that's childhood foundational, and then there's some that isn't even on display in these rooms. They're kind of like, you know, this guy's on display because he's just so crazy cool. But there's a lot of weird things like this that I kept that are just in boxes together that don't really have a place. So
I'm rather envious of all that. Now, Matt Swafford sends in a super chat, but before that, I want to address Melinda. She says, I have emotional baggage from childhood. Does that count? Now, ma'am, I am a little upset because I was told that mine was exclusive. So, I mean, I'm going to have to talk to some therapists or something about that now. But no, it absolutely counts in my book. So, now this is a question I haven't thought of. But he says, Sal, what line would you have been all about collecting in the 80s? And Michael, same question had you grown up in the 90s. I'll let you go first, sir.
Well, the line that I would have collected in the 90s is the line that I ended up collecting as an adult from the 90s. And that was Batman the Animated Series, because I loved looking at it in stores. Never bought it because I was in high school. And then I found out that Batman the Animated Series is one of those weird toy history things where there's this kind of, it dropped off a little. It dropped off because the show, ended or whatever. And then the show got picked up on Toonami and was rerun and got popular again. So Hasbro, that had bought Kenner, started issuing new figures in the same style and scale, using some of the same molds for things like Wayne Manor, just repainted. They reissued some of the vehicles in different deco. And then as part of that, they were bringing out figure sets, and these figure sets had versions of the figures that everybody had wanted the first time around and they never made. So for example, they had Ra's al Ghul in the proper robe rather than the armor, and they had his daughter Talia for the first time. They had Scarface and the marionette, the puppeteer guy, ventriloquist, yeah. That was the only way you could get that one, was in one of these multi-packs. So when I found out about all that, like Alfred came in both a multi-pack and the one of the last versions of Wayne Manor. So that was the only way to get Alfred, because they never made Alfred in the original Kenner animated line, but Hasbro was using the same tooling. Commissioner Gordon was one that was only in one of these multi-packs. He never got made in the original run. So I ran through that whole history of Batman animated toys. Like, I started in the original Kenner era and got the essential stuff, the vehicles, the core characters and villains. And then I leapt over to that other era of Batman toys in like the late 90s, whenever it was, and got all those as well. So I have what I consider the quintessential Batman animated lineup. But you would have, if you were a kid, let's say you were like 5 years old collecting them in 93, when Kenner was on the card back, you'd have been easily like 10, 11, maybe even 13 years old trying to get the rest of them when they came out all that time later. So it's a pretty interesting toy history, and I can't wait to get into it.
Oh yeah. And it's just an incredible show.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
And they did the full series on Blu-ray too. I think they included also the New Adventures of Batman or something
They
like that.
did. Yep, they did.
And that was 2018, I want to say.
Yes, and they've
And
just since come out with Superman on Blu-ray as well to marry up with that. Yep.
And I started rewatching them. I was just, holy crap! Like, because I had like vague memories of the show. I was like, yeah, I remember watching that, and I was watching like, holy crap, this held up so well.
Yeah, and that's why I've been delaying talking about it, because, I mean, you know, the old journalistic adage of if it bleeds, it leads. And I know that there's a lot of people who, you know, they get all mad and they're like, and I'm not trying to get negative. I'm trying to point out something here is that when they watch a video on YouTube about something that they kind of only sort of remember, like Bionic 6, they forget they forget how nonsensical the show really was. But as a person watching it, even though it's kind of painful to get through, at least there's a lot to talk about. Now, I'm not trying to say that there's nothing to talk about in Batman. You can talk about it all day with your friends at a comic convention and stuff and talk about all the great episodes and everything like that. But when you're doing a review and you're trying to find something engaging to say, it doesn't always have to be negative, but it has to be like, I'm very worried because Batman was so well crafted and it was so well scripted and it was so well executed and everything on it. I know some people don't like New Adventures, but it's not that much of a departure.
It's the same voice cast and characters just redesigned.
Yeah, I'm afraid I won't have. I've always been afraid for years now that I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to be like, yeah, it's perfect and I love it. And we should talk about the toys in the next video. Goodbye. Like that. Right. Yeah, it's like, what am I going to say? Like, I'll talk about, oh, it's, you know, because I'll end up saying what everybody else says, deservedly so. But
now, I say Grindhead and I'm sorry, Matt. I'll get back to the first half of your question in a second. I discussed this with Grindhead on his channel not too long ago. We were talking about Spider-Man, the animated series, which was contemporary to that show. And that's kind of the route we took with it, was talking about that as it stacked up against X-Men, the animated series, and Spider-Man, and how, you know, the animation style was very different. But it was very episodic. It was kind of Monster of the Week, where X-Men was kind of the first one to keep that format of doing these micro stories that were 4 or 5 episodes deep. So that's the approach I would take. Like, okay, here's the show, here's how it is, but here's how it stacks up against its contemporaries. Like Spider-Man merging CGI with animation. While it was very kind of rudimentary CGI when he was swinging through buildings, but it kind of laid the groundwork for later animation styles to start incorporating 3D animations or CGI. So
the thing that frustrated me about that was because it wasn't the animator's fault. It wasn't even the writer's fault. It was because Fox Kids, from my experience trying to watch X-Men and Spider-Man, in my market, they just kept running reruns almost instantly. And so you would be like, okay, I've woken up and woke up early and sat down for this episode, you know, on Saturday morning, because, you know, teenagers could watch it without getting invested in the toys. You know, it wasn't a total embarrassment. And you'd watch it. And then I swear the next Saturday, I'd wake up and I'd go back and it was like, oh Lord, it's Night of the Sentinels Part 1 again. And it's like, why am I watching Billy run around again? What is up with this? And the same thing with Spider-Man. So it was a real mistake, I think, given that they didn't have their syndication lined up at first properly, to have those multi-part stories. Because I remember after the second or third round of reruns, I was just, that early on in the show, like they didn't even wait to play out the whole thing before they were rerunning things. It was like, we're going to run episode 1 twice, and then we're going to run 2 and 3, and then you're going to see 4, and then you're going to see 4 again, and then you're going to see 5, and then you're going to see 5 again, and then 6, 7, 8. It was just like, okay, one day I'd love to actually sit down with a DVD set and watch those 2 shows. Finally.
Now, when you eventually, you know, in 2028, get the chance to watch X-Men, because it's not a slog, but there's a lot. I think that they did like 4 seasons, and then the fifth season they technically got canceled or they were done at the end of the. I think it was the fourth season, and then they kind of shat out a fifth season, but they outsourced it to Taiwan. So the animation style changes. It's very shoddy. All the characters look very different,
Right.
and you feel a nice amount of closure at the end of the fourth season. Like the story's over, it's done, and then there's just a fifth season for no reason.
Right.
Like it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
Now, to answer Matt's question, I've been thinking about this because I was like, oh, G.I. Joe, but I collected G.I. Joe in the 90s. I was like, oh, Ninja Turtles. No, I collected. So I was trying to think of a uniquely 80s toy line.
Mm-hmm.
And it would either be Visionaries, because I really like those for some reason, despite how goofy they look. It's the bad guys, really. The good guys kind of look meh to me.
Right.
But Sectars, definitely be Sectars. So
yeah, I'm about to hopefully complete my Sectars collection and finally be able to do a video about that. So
I did not know it was incomplete. I have I'll send you a picture later. I have a Sectars figure. You probably have it. You may not. I don't know. He came with some weapons, but the one I had, he had green armor and purple arms. That's all I know about him.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've got him over there somewhere. Yep, I see him right now. Yep.
That was the one and only that I had as a kid.
Yeah, the one figure that I probably won't ever have complete, I just have the base figure because his accessories are so hard to find, is that variant of Dargon with the silver chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's his accessories that are hard to find, apparently, not him. So,
gotcha.
But as far as the core goes, because I'm not big on variations. When I say variations, I mean, I've talked extensively about I don't need Toxo suit Batman. He never showed up in the show.
Right.
I don't, So same thing with this Dargon. I have the basic Dargon that came with the Dragon Flyer. I'm very happy with that. So as soon as I have the last few unique pieces for Sectars, I will be ready to do the thing. And I'm not far off from what I've been told. So we shall see.
And I just realized that I lied because this is from my childhood.
Oh, nice.
So, and this is exactly the way that I got him.
Yeah.
So no
wings always break off. Yep.
So I didn't know he was from Sectars until I watched one of your videos where he made an appearance. I think he was with the Hive or he was with something on display. I was like, oh, I didn't know. Like I was young enough where I wore him on my wrist and I ran around the backyard.
Nice.
So, Jason Anderson has a funny comment. He says, I was lucky that I was able to empty my childhood emotional bag so I could fill them with teenage issues.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
You lucky son of a gun.
Yeah. I think that's what happened to me was I had so many childhood emotional bags already filled that when I got into my teenage years, I said, I'm not going to take on any more of this. And I just became not frustrating in the typical teenage rebellious way, but more like standoffish and just kind of hard to read and hard to get to know in some ways. Because I was like, I'm filled up. I'm done.
Nice. Now, I see Tree Theodore super chat. Thank you, by the way. Before I get to that, David says, and I still have my Devil Force, Action Force Devilfish.
So, I wish there was a Devil Force toy line. Now, for the Devil Force Action Fish.
That would have been the ultimate, just, thumb in the nose to the Satanic Panic in the 80s. Devil Force.
Devil Force. And I want an Action Fish vehicle. The Devil Force Action Fish. That's what I want.
So, Tree Theodore, thank you for the super chat. He says, awesome channel sound, Michael. Much respect to your collab and the time you put into your work. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I was one of those that I mentioned this. I think it was on Tony's channel. He asked how I got into YouTube or what got me started. I didn't take YouTube seriously for a very long time. I didn't take YouTubers seriously for a long time. And then once I started kind of getting into it, and then I started my own channel, I was like, this is coming from someone who basically makes, sticker books versions of YouTube videos, or like the watercolor books where you just get the brush wet and the colors there, you just go over. That's pretty much the equivalent of my videos.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And I thought when I started in 2012, I used, AVGN as I don't mean I used AVGN as a style model, more along the lines of I wanted to be on par with his production level. In other words, I wanted to start out because I'd gone to film school. So, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do that.
Mhm.
And I did. And at that time in 2012, I was trying to do videos at that same production level. And then you naturally improve as you keep going with whatever style you pick. And it's funny because you look back on all the effort and hours and late nights you put into videos back then, and you try and watch them and you go, wow, I was up till 3 a.m. doing that. Like,
Mhm.
wow, because like now I wouldn't even let a video like that out. But I have to stop insulting myself. And same thing with you. Like, those are early videos, whatever they were in
Mhm.
your style, you were putting everything you had into them. You've
Right.
just now learned better tricks and you've learned how to work more efficiently and everything like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's my very early, not my earliest reviews, but there for a while I was making these quote unquote figure reviews
Mm-hmm.
that were like 12, 15 minutes long, and more
Yep.
than half of the video was me going over like character backgrounds and where they first appeared in comics and stuff like that. And then I was like, why am I doing this? It was taking me 3 times as long to source all that information and the images I wanted to use instead
Yep.
of just talking about the figure. And started looking at analytics and saw people were just dropping off the video before they even got to the figure part. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to do that anymore.
Right.
So, oh, Wolfie762, he says, my bag was made by Samsonite. I
Zing.
was I wasn't even close. Yeah. Oh, let me make sure. Okay, make sure I didn't jump on me because I've seen some super chats
Yeah,
showing
I've
up. I
got
want
one
to
here
try
from
and.
I've got one here from a world made of cardboard
Yep,
at 6:44 p.m. and they're
there
right
it
up.
is.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, make sure there's nothing before. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Okay, please don't jump on me again. All right. World Made of Cardboard says, Sal, 90s G.I. Joe Ice Cream Soldier and Mega Marines clutch on your table. Love them too. Driving and parked my car. Oh, wow. Yeah, Ice Cream Soldier, I have like 4 of him. And it's a weird phenomenon, Michael. I swear to you. I was able to get a complete Ice Cream Soldier in like late 2018, early 2019 for like $5 because
Uh-huh.
everyone hated the Neon Joes. He's going for like $80 now.
Why? Is it because he's the last one? Is that?
I don't know. Like even like these Mega Marines, like
Yeah.
again, no one cares about 90 Joes or no one cared. And
Right.
I think what it is that people who are collecting GI Joe see the prices of the or like the first, the
Uh-huh.
82, 83, and like how they're all steadily going up. So now all the
Right.
Joe collectors are jumping to the 90s to try and buy them up before the
Right.
price really, and now the people who sell them are raising the price incrementally to
Right.
keep Battle Force 2000 is still pretty holding pretty strong at their price
Yeah.
point.
Now,
But
as somebody who you collected 90s Joes, you were in that age
Mhm.
range. Is that right?
That's correct. This
Okay.
one, General Flag, is my childhood. He's the only one that has
Uh-huh.
survived, and I
Right.
hope to God that his O-ring never breaks because he's super glued together.
Right. Right.
So
Um,
that's why he's the only one that I keep a carded version of.
oh, his torso is super glued together. So,
Yeah, like this
oh,
the screw. He's
yeah.
so I'm gonna have to do the toy ploy elastic string
Right.
fix if he ever breaks.
Do you have an interest then in the Street Fighter 2 GI Joes?
I do sans pubes, but I do.
Right.
Um, I had Guile,
Mhm.
Blanca, and uh, who I think Zangief maybe. I had a
Uh-huh.
few of them, but Blanca was what I really liked.
Okay, so what you're saying is if I thoroughly fumigate what I acquired, then you wouldn't have a problem with me sending those to you.
They will have a very loving home with me.
I ended up not having to use them in the documentary, and so it was like, well, now I've got carded ones too.
Oh wow!
I would happily send you those as well. Like,
Now, I,
hold on, let me grab them. You got to see these carded ones; they're nice.
okay,
Tell a dirty limerick or something. I'll be right back.
a dirty limerick. There once was a man from Nantucket. Um, so, but yeah, while Michael's doing that, I'm assuming he can hear me. But 90 Joes were my thing. Like I had, I've mentioned this a couple times. I had an older brother who is younger than Michael, but a little He's basically I think he might be a couple months younger than Laser Pants. So he had some GI Joes in the house. I remember Voltaire and Blizzard and Muskrat. Those are the three that I didn't know they were GI Joe. Like Flag was my personal first GI Joe. So I had a couple '80s Joes, and then kids down the street had '80s Joes because I was like the youngest kid on the block kind of deal. But '90s Joes were what was new on the peg for me, which included Mortal Kombat GI Joes and that Street Fighter GI Joes, Ninja Force or Shadow Ninjas or whatever they were called, the color changing ones. So that's kind of what I have. Like this version of Storm Shadow, which is not my childhood one, I don't think, but he's one of the last ones I got in store. So
Nice.
And they re-engineered. Oh goodness! Of course I would drop it. They re-engineered the thumbs to where like the hands were softer plastics. You'd have to break
yeah,
it.
That's choice.
Yeah, this version of Storm Shadow, like the first kind of Joes that the Hall of Fame GI Joes, I had a lot of those. So that Storm Shadow was Storm Shadow to me. I didn't know he had a solid white costume or a solid white gi. So when I saw that, I was like, "Mom, please, I have to have it."
Well, if you choose to accept my donation, and I will wash the loose figures, they're all represented, so they're all there. You will also receive, as part of this donation, you will receive a carded Chun-Li. You will receive
Ninja Force Scarlet Body.
Yeah, it's a Ninja Force Scarlet Body. You are absolutely correct, sir. It is
such a weird choice for Ninja Force too.
Yeah, you will receive M. Bison. I believe some of his body is Road Pig, if I'm not mistaken. You will receive the aforementioned Blanca.
Now, was he was the one that you bought, and the guy sent you the wrong one, right?
Yes, that is correct. And then you will receive a bonus M. Bison to do with what you will, and finally, as part of the carded contingent, you will receive Ryu.
Oh my goodness! Well, you humble me, sir. They will always have a cherished home amongst my collection.
You do with them as you will, sir, and I just can't wait to see what, if or nothing, you do with them. So,
well, as luck would have it, there is a version of M. Bison I'm trying to track down. He's that same M. Bison, but he's all in black.
Oh,
and they used that same M. Bison to make him into a character from the Red Shadows. So all it is, it's the same guy, but I think they put that little skull on his uniform somewhere. So, Analog says Kylie Minogue is 10,000% better than the Cranberries. Fight me. That's what we would call a fact, not an opinion.
That's right.
Jeff Baker says, along the same line as Matt's question, what comic book or toy property from the 80s or 90s that you didn't have a cartoon would you like to see have one?
My answer to that would be, probably I would have loved to have seen. I know they had X-Men. I know that they did that in the 90s, so this might be kind of a cheat, but I don't feel it is. I really tried to get into the X books. My brother collected Uncanny and X-Men, the two titles. He had no problem. He collected X-Force. And I was the oddball that collected Excalibur because it was funnier and it was set in England. So it was like, that's what I want to collect.
Yeah, it's got Nightcrawler. What's not to like?
It's got that was my real way in. It was like, it's got Nightcrawler and it's set in England, sold. And I collected Excalibur pretty religiously there for a while. I would have liked to have seen that as an animated show. I think it would have had a lot more fun with it, So, yeah.
Now, for me, it might be a cop-out, just kind of thinking, as they like to say in my job, just a piggyback. I would like to see the Pride of the X-Men be continued, like
Uh-huh.
with that same team. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it's been a while, a couple years since I watched the whole thing, the whole show, but I feel like Colossus really didn't get used enough.
Mm-hmm.
And this is someone who loves the Jim Lee team. I really do, but you know, I don't know, either that, because a lot of the stuff that comes to mind had a TV show, even if it was short lived. Like Street Sharks had a very
Mm-hmm.
short lived TV
Right.
show, and I believe there was the backdoor pilot for Extreme Dinosaurs with that.
Uh-huh.
Um, oh, it jumped on me. That's okay.
I've got you covered right here.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's there's a Wolfie super chat at 6:47 p.m.
Yep. And there it is. That okay. So he said, "Oh, that might be for you, Michael."
They're using a bounty hunter called Kylie Minogue to fight the Cranberry Army. Yeah, I would watch that movie.
Cranberry Army sounds like something you would find in like Strawberry Shortcake.
Mm-hmm. And also, I guess maybe Tony thought of this because we were talking about Street Fighter.
Could be.
Because she played Cammy in the Street Fighter movie.
She did.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that movie.
Who can?
I spent that whole movie just going, "Where's Blanca? Where's Blanca?" And I think he's in like 10 seconds. Like the guy who becomes Blanca is like in the whole thing, but you see a little bit of him. Wolfie says pubeless to Timothy Ward says, "Send the pubes to me."
Actually, Timothy Ward's got a really nice parcel on the way as soon as I get this retro collection Mandalorian thing done. So I'll be sending a parcel his way. So he has some stuff to look forward to as well.
All right. I've been meaning to send Timothy Ward. I'll send you a message on Facebook. I wanted to send him and Michael Schaefer something for their help during Iconicon, even though they both said no. I've been thinking about it ever since, so I have to do it just to show my appreciation for both of you for moderating the chats. Jim Largo sends a super chat. Thank you. Says, "Howdy, Sal and Michael. Any nifty garage sale or swap meets finds from back in the day? Long live Iconicon."
Yeah, I have. I think I've told this story in various points, I guess, in live streams or interviews, maybe. But it's not a long one. It's just simply that I've been a lifelong toy collector. Like, as soon as you couldn't get Star Wars toys anymore, and I figured that out, like in '85, they dwindled down. By '87, I realized I didn't like any of the other toy lines that had come out to replace it. It was because I hadn't really reconciled my life with G.I. Joe yet. Let's put it that way. G.I. Joe was trickling in, but I was still on the hunt for something more fantastical. And Mask was cool, but didn't last long enough. Voltron was cool, didn't last long enough. It had all the lead scare problems. There was drama. Didn't like Transformers after a point. Ghostbusters were too fragile. Silverhawk sucked. It was a whole thing. Captain Power ended up being really boring. The toys, I never got to see the show. But by 1987, I was going to flea markets in Nashville looking for people selling off old Star Wars toys.
Mm-hmm.
I was still a kid. I wanted to play with them. That's the way I finally got characters like Hoth Leia, which is right here. This Hoth Leia came from a flea market find in Nashville. She was picked up, didn't have a weapon, of course. Mm-hmm. I added a weapon for her several years back when vintage accessory prices were still somewhat reasonable. But yeah, this is my childhood Hoth Leia that I played with in the 80s, but I got her secondhand at a flea market.
She looks like she's in great shape.
Yeah, she's missing one eyebrow, as you can see, and it's been that way since I bought her. So
who hasn't been through high school chemistry?
The other swap meet figure that I found was a few years ago. I was hunting through a $2 bin of loose Star Wars figures at Toylanta,
mm-hmm.
and they were all beaters, pretty much. or just no accessories. And in there was a very, very lightly worn painted hair Jedi Luke Skywalker. And I was like, ooh, like that's one people just pass right over because beater Jedi Lukes are everywhere. But this one, matter of fact, I've got them right here. So this was found for $2.
Wow.
And I have not done any touch up on him. I only touch up when people ask me to. I don't touch up my own stuff unless it's just egregious. And yeah, this guy was $2. Now, obviously, I gave him his vintage accessories back, but yeah, that's a painted hair Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. So
that's one of my favorite stories, actually, when you talk about that.
Yeah.
For me, this guy whose toy line escapes me, if I can get him out without knocking everything over. I got him at a yard sale. He had his arms back then. Lord knows what happened to them, but I found what toy line he's from at one point. I don't remember what it is now, but like finding him on card was, this is in 2018 when I figured that out, so it's been a little minute. The secondary price on him was ridiculous.
Yeah,
just absolutely asinine.
That's crazy.
Desert Rat sends in a super chat. Thank you. He says, Valaverse, I need an Australian sniper named Kylie to assist me on my next mission. Absolutely. I was, I had never heard, what is it? Locomotion, I think, was like her American hit in the 90s or 80s.
Late 80s, yeah, 88. Yep.
I'd never heard. I was on that kind of second wave in 2001.
Yeah,
I think when
Can't
she
Get
had
You Out of My Head.
Yeah, and Love at First Sight. That was the first one I ever heard.
Yep.
And then this is at the height of like the Christina Aguilera's and the Alicia Keys and all that. And I was like, I didn't care about any of that because I was already into kind of like hard rock at that point, transitioning into metal. And I heard that song and I was like, who is this?
Yeah.
It was. She had the look of the American contemporaries, but had a different sound.
Yes, she was also, unbeknownst to a lot of Americans, she was already a singing music veteran. She was already, she wasn't some young upstart. She was still young. But what I mean is she wasn't green in her career. She was already a pro, like a true pro by that point. And yeah, it's funny you bring that song up because when Melinda and I met and got to know each other, you know, her tastes and my tastes in music, they cross a lot. There's a Venn diagram there, but I have a real affinity for Euro pop and stuff like that from when I grew up in the UK. And I've kept up with it. Thank God for the internet. It's the one thing it gave me that was positive was being able to collect CDs and movies from overseas. But when she heard Love at First Sight, she was like, this is my favorite Kylie song. And I'm like, you have good taste. So she actually really, really likes that song.
Mm-hmm. I very much like the thing that grabs me now listening with like kind of my music background and knowledge is the lo-fi at the very beginning that swell into the song. It's, I don't know. I hate to say the best part of the song is the first 10 seconds. But it's one of my favorite parts of that whole is that lead in. So I liken it to where it's like you're hearing it through someone else's headphones that they're wearing, and then they pull the headphones down and you can hear the rest of the song. It's kind of what it is for me.
Yes.
So M. Vargo sends in another super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, I missed the boat on Vintage Joe's in store, but I got lucky that I had an older brothers and neighbor who bought a bunch of 90s Joes bought a bunch of 90 Joes from for cheap.
Nice.
That's not too dissimilar from my situation. Older brothers and neighbors that had 80s Joes, I had 90s on pegs. But the vast majority, I don't talk about it a lot, but Nitro Viper back here is one of my favorites. And I got a bunch of kind of quasi vintage Joes from a kid in middle school. I traded him my Micro Machine Star Trek ships for him. So that was nice to see. Map Room has an observation. He says, I had Chun-Li as a kid, and I swear she had normal Joe legs, but every time I see the figure, she has what do they call it? The T legs.
And
that's one of those what would you call it? One of those Mandela effect things. But I'm assuming because the Chun-Li I always knew had the kick action. So, but could be. Let's see. I think we're all caught up. Nope, we're not. All right. Goodness. I saw Lio's before it jumped. There he is. Lio Convoy says, that reminds me, Sal, check your P.O. box. I checked technically this morning, and I picked some stuff up. I didn't see anything from you yet, Thomas. I'll have to check again on Thursday morning, or I'm sorry, Friday morning. But sold Lio as you may or may not know, I'm offloading my NECA TMNT stuff, so I was able to sell him a set that was I wouldn't say exclusive, but very hard to find now because I offered it up for a week.
Right.
So, but I will, Thomas. Thank you for the super chat. You could have just messaged me that, but I do appreciate it. Reclaimers says, so not to sound like some kind of guru or anything, but I don't see Ice Cream Soldier on the table, and I'm thinking that the orange and white Storm Shadow is who you guys are referring to.
Maybe he's talking about Annihilator back there, and he thinks that's Ice Cream Soldier.
It could be. This is Nitro Viper.
Oh, Nitro Viper. Okay, sorry.
He was a ship driver, but I don't remember what ship. It was like the detonator or something. There's no markings on this guy to indicate that he's a bad guy or a villain in any way.
Right.
So I just used him as a catch-all. He was one of my favorites. I had this affinity for Joes that you couldn't see their faces.
I
don't know. It's always been a thing with me. Like I like the mystery, I guess, or it's easier to kind of imprint yourself on that figure and just give them whatever story you want. So, all right, let's try and catch up on these super chats here. World Made of Cardboard says, do you mix your toy lines when you play it? Or he says, I mix G.I. Joe and Star Wars, play Doctor Who. Michael?
I would mix lines as long as they scaled properly. So, occasionally I would put G.I. Joes with Star Wars, and Indiana Jones would go on adventures sometimes with, Indiana Jones and G.I. Joe. I rarely did things like Lone Ranger in Star Wars. If it was anything, it was Indiana Jones and Lone Ranger. I wasn't trying to be a pedantic kid, but sometimes it was just like I couldn't. Like, okay, so for example, Captain Power was 3 3/4 inch, and he could team up with Star Wars a lot. My TNG Galoob William Riker was 3 3/4 inch. Thundercats and He-Man somewhat could intermingle. Mask you really couldn't do much with those. They kind of were unto themselves unless everything else was a giant trying to attack them, which with giant robots that works. There was a little bit of cross pollination. Yeah.
That was very much like yourself. If the scale matched, I was good to go, but it was really hard to kind of suspend your disbelief.
Right.
Like if I wanted Batman to be with the G.I. Joes, it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but Desert Rat sends in another super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, F-Bomb is mad at me now. For those that are in on the joke on who F-Bomb is.
Yes. I wonder. Wait, I don't wonder. I just hope Desert Rat's okay. That's all I hope.
I hope he's not within hitting distance.
Right.
So, man, actually, the Flying Ninja says, Mask went okay with Dino Riders. And I made that observation a couple times that Dino Rider figures and Mask figures were the same scale. So for those that want to kind of branch out their little Mask displays, you can. So, and Matt kind of solidifies what we say is that scale was probably the most single important factor when it came to cross-pollination.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I find that worked were things that were monsters, like how you say in your review, toys for your other toys. When it came to Inhumanoids, that you could get away with, but.
And Flying Ninja's right. Mask did go okay with Dino Riders for sure. The problem is I didn't have any Dino Riders. I was never that into dinosaur toys as a kid. Like I liked dinosaurs as an idea, but I was never like somebody that wanted to run out and buy toys of dinosaurs.
Yeah, that was I was in that sweet spot where I was like 4, maybe 3 when Jurassic Park came out.
Right.
And I don't know. To me, I was like, yeah, every kid goes through that phase of buying dinosaurs, but I guess it was really Jurassic Park that kind of started all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Desert Rat sends in another super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, she, F bomb, is jealous of our love of Kylie.
Oh no. Well, you just got to tell her, Desert Rat, that Kylie is a nostalgic love. Kylie is a nostalgic love that stays with us. She's going on this generational journey with us, but she is also that sister we never had. Like she's not, and also play the Robbie Williams Kylie duo kids for her, and that way she can kind of see, oh, okay, it's like a nostalgic thing. So
Right. And now that we're all caught up, let's there's a question that you've answered kind of in reverse a
okay,
few times.
okay.
It's, was there anything, like any toys that you had as a kid that you didn't like but now you appreciate as an adult?
There were toys I ended up ignoring a lot as a kid or not realizing how useful they were until I looked back as an adult. So, for example, while I didn't get excited when I saw my G.I. Joe APC, that G.I. Joe APC was the most utilized vehicle in my entire G.I. Joe playtime. And looking back, now it has a cherished place here in my studio because it's my childhood original and that was the one, and it's looking back through on your childhood through the lens of an adult. So this is one that's going to seem a little like backhanded praise, this next one, but I shouldn't say hated. I was so disappointed with Silverhawks as a toy line. They were deceptively advertised because they used this like stop motion Quicksilver in the intros of the commercials that could do all the cool stuff. But he looked like a plastic action figure. And so even though we saw the kids playing with the real toys, there was this impression that they're only showing us part of what they can do. Like that maybe these toys can actually do a lot more. And so when I went and got Quicksilver, up until the moment where the bubble was finally opened and I held him in my hand, did I realize he doesn't have a mask. He doesn't have any articulation that's useful. All he can do is do the wing thing over and over again, or stand there with his arms at his sides, and kind of do this number, like it was very disappointing. And then the chrome rubbed off real bad. So he was a worthless toy for a child. As a collectible, if you find him in 98% near mint condition, you won't find a more beautiful set of action figures to display. You just won't. I mean, that's
right.
That's almost fact and not opinion. That's almost fact, given how they look. The only set of figures that really rivals it, as far as just wow factor on the shelf, is Kenner Superpowers, because they were so colorful and well balanced. Their decos were also well balanced, and when they're in a big group, it's just like wow. But Silverhawks with their villains and then the Chrome heroes comes very close. Like it's a neck and neck race to number one. So I've overtalked that answer, but those are my two picks: the APC and Silverhawk heroes that were Chrome.
Yeah, that's the old APCs. It's not visually striking. And I think that's kind of its hindrance,
right?
Especially when you have things like the killer whale or pretty much anything else that's available. There's not a whole lot of action kind of packed into it.
Right.
But that's the way she goes.
Yep.
So on the flip side of that, is there what was there, or was there anything you had as a kid that now as an adult, when we're able to take off those rose-colored lenses, that you're like, this actually was not that great of a toy, but you have a deep love for?
Well, as a child, I realized the real Ghostbusters figures first wave were not that great a set of action figures, but that's kind of a dodge because I realized that as a child, and then put them aside and treated them with kid gloves for the remainder of their lifetime. And there they are up there now. As an adult, something that I liked a lot as a kid that has now become kind of garbage. Well, it's literally become garbage are the vintage Masters of the Universe figures. They were a lot of fun to play with as a kid. They were great, but they were not future proofed like Dino Man was. You know, they have the rotting leg bands, and they have the discolored squishy heads, and you know, they have that waist action that can get all gummed up or, you know, seized up, kind of like superpowers can. And now they're rotting and falling apart, and you can break them even more trying to put them back together. Ain't nobody got time for that. Nope. So, you know, that's one example. Another example, I guess, of a toy that I really liked back then, that's probably no good now. You know, as much as I paid to get one back, I'll say that the Force lightsaber from Kenner with the hollow sort of whistle on top where it would go woo, 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 that toy. I liked it a lot as a kid, but they were not meant to hold up. They were meant to get your parents to end up wasting $5 so that you could swing them around, but the moment you swung them into each other, you know, it was game over. So the plastic just wouldn't hold up. So I have fond memories of playing with it, but I also have negative memories of seeing how quickly they got torn up. So as an adult looking back, I'm like, yeah, not the greatest toy.
Yeah. That's Jason Anderson actually has there's a few people in the chat talking about Robotech and all that stuff. I remember really wanting the Matchbox Robotech toys back in the 80s until I saw them in the flesh and thought they were like cheap knockoff toys.
Right.
So
yeah.
The only Robotech I've ever seen are like the figures themselves. That's the only Robotech figures I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, they're kind of janky. They did their best, like I said in my retrospective on the toy line. They Matchbox had a lot of ambition trying to get that to be a Star Wars scale toy line. They really, really tried. And I feel like they came close, but Matchbox wasn't they weren't an action figure company. They were a diecast car company, and they didn't use the right plastics. They didn't have very good engineering for the various vehicles. They didn't know what to pick from all three series because these producers were stitching three unrelated series together. So it was really hard to figure out, well, which show should we be pulling from first, kind of thing. And so it ended up being a very uneven line with very fragile action figures because of their inexperience in the manufacturing process. And they were trying to like physically base them off the animation, which that created some hideous nightmare fuel. So yeah, it was a great effort that just didn't reach escape velocity.
And Greg Fenstead has a question for you, Michael. He says, of the 80s revivals that have happened since 2000, what show and what toy line has been your favorite?
Of the 80s revivals that have happened since 2000, what show and what
quite a few.
Yeah, there are quite a few. There have been toy line revivals and there have been show revivals. So let me see. I guess he is asking what show and what toy line. Sorry, I thought for a minute he said toy line based on a show. Well, my favorite toy line revival has been Masters of the Universe Origins, despite the frustration in trying to acquire them. I do give a lot of respect to the 25th anniversary GI Joes from back in 2007. I didn't end up buying a lot of them. I bought, like, when I say buying a lot of them, I didn't buy through all the vehicles and all that stuff. I bought a bunch of the figures and like a few vehicles here and there, and that was about it. But I liked them enough. They had their problems holding weapons and all that articulation. As I said in my Rogue One Rogue One toy sort of mini documentary infotainment piece, whatever it was, that Hasbro was really showing a lot of ambition in the late 2000s and into the early 2010s with the vintage collection Star Wars stuff, like with the Legacy Falcon and the Legacy AT-AT and stuff like that with the figures. I think by and large, that was a really great effort. And I think that'll be seen for a long time as the true renaissance of traditional Star Wars toys. But yeah, Masters of the Universe Origins, I think, is my pick for a toy line. As far as a show, I don't know. I'm not sure. I block out so many reboots after I see them.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly can't think of a show that's a reboot or a relaunch that has stayed in my memory. Now that doesn't mean that I've only thought they all sucked or anything like that. But I honestly can't think of one that I thought was good enough that I retained it. I know that sounds bad. Sorry, I can't. I honestly can't think of a show that's a reboot or revival that has been so exciting that I've wanted to own it and keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, Melinda just brought one up. Melinda just saved my bacon. Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai.
That's a good one.
That's the one. Sorry, Cobra Kai.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, babe.
Yeah, that's one in a world full of reboots. Like when they announced that Cobra Kai was going to be a show, I'm like, is anyone asking for this?
Right.
And then I watched it. I was like, holy crap, because we'd been inundated with updates and we need to change it for like modern times. I think where they did it right is they had this perfect blending of it was because it's kind of a soft reboot in a lot of ways. But they kind of flipped it on its head. Like there's the old trope of like the good guys are bad guys now, but now it's more the waters are a little muddied because you didn't see it from Johnny's point of view. He was this bully that was bullying John or bullying Daniel, and then it's like, oh no, he had a lot of this stuff going on that kind of didn't justify it, but you could get into his headspace a little bit better. So then you find out that Kreese is really the villain behind everything. At least it's kind of evident looking back and watching it now, but for someone like me who only knew about the crane kick really at the end, it's a nice kind of, I guess, revisit.
Yes, so. And that definitely would be my pick, for sure. Yes.
So, alrighty. So, since it's called the way I played, I think we need to talk about playtime just a little bit.
Okay.
I would love to hear a story involving the duck blanket.
Oh, yeah. The duck blanket came about as an accident at playtime. My earliest memories of using the duck blanket are with my vintage Star Wars figures. The duck blanket was always in the den, and it was always on the couch. And occasionally, it would end up on the floor. And sometimes it would end up on the floor in a pile. And one day I just looked over and it was sitting in the middle of the room in a pile. And sure enough, I noticed that it looked like this crenellated kind of mountainous, hilly area with a lot of natural caves and ledges and features. And so I started putting my Star Wars figures in various places, like Han Solo up on the top, Bespin Han with his, gun pointed down. That was, probably one of the few guns I was able to hold on to. The Jawas and stuff kind of, in the little crevices at the base, where they'd have these little caves, Yoda, it would be like Dagobah a lot of the time. And it would also be like a place where you could kind of lay siege to it and or explore. It was like, oh, we've got to protect, it's like King of the Hill, literally the game, not the TV show. It's like we got to protect the summit of the hill from people getting up here, so we got to defend it. So naturally, there came a time when GI Joes would end up playing, I'd play with them with the blanket a lot. And the nice thing about it was a beater lack blanket. I wasn't aware of this when I did that video, but a lot of people didn't use bed sheets and things the same way because they were not a heavy stock furry blanket like that. So when you dropped a bed sheet on the floor, it was pretty much like a water puddle. It would just kind of go blah, 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 and there wasn't really a lot to work with. These beater-lack blankets were real thick, so when you dropped them, they like resisted completely. They resisted gravity to a certain degree, and they formed their own contours. They could hold themselves up in a certain way randomly. And so you could actually put action figures on its folds and everything like that. And the folds wouldn't just collapse like they would on a bed sheet. It held its form. So it was a unique kind of thing that I just discovered. Yeah, it was a centerpiece a lot of the time. And it would get supplemented with other things like, sometimes it would be like the mountain that was just beyond, Jabba's palace or something like that. And so the heroes would be there and trying to plan their attack on Jabba the Hutt, or something like that, to rescue whoever. And it was a really useful kind of thing. Not as useful with wheeled vehicles though, because you grab a wheeled vehicle with your hand and you kind of there's that natural tendency to put some pressure, some downward pressure on the vehicle,
right? Because you want the wheels to turn.
Yeah, the wheels to turn, and the beater-lack blanket will hold up real well. But even when you put pressure on it, the form that you've created will kind of go, just a little bit. Like it's not for vehicles or anything like that. Now, if it was like a light plastic mini rig or something that could fly, and then you could kind of land it, on it, that totally fine. But it was very much a figure environment. It was a character environment. It was so action figures could get in there and get lost, and then fight each other, tunnel rat style. The blanket was just, it was so versatile, and yet it allowed you to not have to pine for. I honestly think that's probably why I ended up with very few play sets as a kid. I had the Ewok Village, and then later on I had what I later found out was a very stripped out Death Star space station playset that I bought for $2 in 87, 88. Like I said, I was looking for them. But aside from those, I didn't have any playsets. I had that blanket and the backyard and whatever features were in the house, like the brick hearth and things like that. That was what sustained me.
Now, that speaking of kind of the duck blanket and locations and all that, one of my favorite things to kind of discuss is your playtime environment. Like, were you very much this is my corner or this is my couch that I play at, or was it okay, I'm going to set up the bad guys over here, but in the living room I'm going to set up the good guys headquarters? You're going to have like what was the breadth or the depth of field for your playtime?
Any room that I was in, I would choose sides. In other words, I would pick a bad guy side and a good guy side. Unless of course it was more of a infiltration story, or every now and then I would have like these weird things. Like I wasn't a sadistic child. I just had these, because you would see these movies and you wouldn't quite understand what these sci-fi movies were about. And I'm talking when I was real little, like 4, 5 years old. And so you would hear about things like, radiation sickness and stuff. And so you would think that emanates electrically from a robot, even though it doesn't, but you would think that.
Right.
And so like, Death Star droid and R5D4, I didn't have any context for them. And so they would be like the bad R2 and 3PO. And they emanated these electrical fields that made people sick. Like I was just, so like depending on the play scenario, sometimes you didn't need sides. Sometimes you just threw yourself into a scenario. Other times it was sides. A lot of times, to my mom's great frustration, it was Joe's at the bottom of the stairs, Cobra at the top. And Joe's had to get to the top of the stairs without Cobra spotting them.
Right.
And then, fight them off, and take the hill or whatever. We had one major staircase in the house, and Mom didn't like the fact that, we were taking it up a lot of the time with Joe's. Understandably now. But at the time, you think, hey, sometimes it was, the floor versus the bed in your bedroom. It's like, This is the floor, this is the bed. And sometimes it was, bunker on one end of the bed, bunker on the other end of the bed, or in the middle. And then, when you're outside, it's a totally different ball game. Outside, it tended to be more of a, for me anyway, because I'd already lost so many Star Wars weapons by that point. And also there was a neighbor's dog that would eat Star Wars figures right next door, and ate all this kid's toys. So it was like, and tried to get away with a few of mine on occasion. So miraculously rescued. My forearm still has a dog bite in the snoot.
Something about that 80s plastic, dogs loved it.
Yeah, especially the GI Joes they didn't care about, but the Star Wars figures, it was a thing. It gets back to that whole thing about how some people believe Star Wars figures have this like glorious smell when they're new, right? Imagine a dog just like, what is that?
Right.
So when I was outside, I ended up evolving my play style to really be self-contained, because I didn't want to walk away from figures with another group of figures, if that makes any sense. Because I knew that dog could be anywhere, or I could lose them coming back. So like, if you're playing out in a Tennessee backyard in the fall, or even heck in the late summer, and you leave Bausch Leia and Skiffguard Lando Calrissian in the grass in one area, and you take the Falcon 5 yards away, you're a kid. When you come back, your kid eyes might not be able to see them. That's how I think I lost my Carbonite for my Han Solo and Carbonite from the last 17, because when that thing falls on the ground, it's translucent brown. You're done.
Right. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. So I ended up in the backyard. I would literally like bring a contained vehicle, like mostly it was usually like the Millennium Falcon, or the APC. The APC was great for this, because you could hold so many figures. And I would go out there and I would have like, a mission with the Falcon, where the Falcon lands somewhere, everybody gets out and looks around, they see something. I don't know what I came up with in my mind's eye, and then they'd all get back in the Falcon and they fly off again. And I'm sure that evolved from my childhood alarm going off of, Doggy Dar, where it's like there is this crazy dog somewhere, and and also just not wanting to lose my stuff. So
yeah, that's very quickly. Jason Anderson makes a very astute observation. He says, "Neighbor's dog eats Kenner but poops NECA."
Yeah,
that's very true.
That's a good point.
And all this talk of inside outside, I know we're coming up on time, but I don't know what you have planned for the evening, or how late you're willing to go.
Sal, I don't know you all that well, so I'm really not willing to sit here and talk with you. So if we could just wrap this up.
Right. Yeah. that's I find myself, I'm asking all these questions. I'm like, you and I and Tony talk every day, and you've answered so many of these questions like numerous times on live streams and videos. I'm always like, oh God. Like,
actually, a lot of these types of questions, as far as digging into memories of play, it's only been touched on very much on the surface here and there. I've never gone this far into trying to really dig into my psyche of why I played a certain way. So this has actually been a nice conversation for me. So,
excellent. I love to hear that, because we've only scratched the surface, really.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I want to briefly touch on, and it's something I think we've all experienced, but we never talk about as collectors. You had me thinking when you were talking about the duck blanket and the vehicles and all that, the little carpet fibers that would end up on the axles of your vehicles.
Yes.
And how you'd look at it and you'd sit there with your fingers trying to pull them off, and you couldn't, and eventually it would just kind of lock up the axles on certain vehicles.
Yes, that was a big problem. And then dust on vehicles was a big problem too, because the dust would create lint. The lint would get caught in the edges of the stickers. The dust would then eventually get dirty, because and then it would kind of turn brownish with that carpet lint in it and stuff. And your
stickers would be dog-eared.
Yes, when I restored my childhood Millennium Falcon, that was the first time since 1984 that I'd actually seen it without that kind of dirt and crud in it. It was fascinating to see. And oddly enough, when the stickers all were able to just get blown off of it because they lost all their stick, and I rejuvenated them with that 3M spray. They didn't even keep the carpet lint on them. They were the adhesive was that done. So when I blew them off, the carpet lint went with it. Like they were just clean as a whistle on the underside. It was crazy.
Nice.
That whole thing with the losing stuff in the backyard, I just now realized that was also probably prompted by the fact that we had a creek out. Some people say crick, some people say brook, but we had a.
Where I'm from, we say crick.
Yeah, we say
Greek just fine. Makes no sense.
Right. We had a creek out in the backyard, and it ended in this kind of big. It was big to me as a kid, but in other words, one end of it where it ended in kind of a rainwater catch was natural rainwater catch was larger than the creek itself was, because that was where the flow ended.
Right.
And then it would go into like a storm drain or one of those big round corrugated metal storm drain tubes that would follow under the street or something. Well, Christmas, it wouldn't have been Christmas morning because it would have been too cold. But like right as spring was about to happen, or was starting, spring of '85 was when it would have been. I couldn't stand it anymore, and I took my brand new hovercraft, my G.I. Joe hovercraft with my new figures, to that part of the creek. And it had the muddy water in it, where
the bilge water.
Yeah. I ended up losing helmets, weapons, a depth charge, never to get them back. And my G.I. Joe whale was muddy and gross from then on out. Like it was just, because that water then evaporated inside and out, and it just left all of this silt. And it stayed that way until I restored my hovercraft a year before I started doing retroblasting. So that was the first time I'd actually ever torn it down and, fixed, cleaned it, like really scrubbed it. So, yeah.
That's it had me remembering a story, and I cannot remember where I heard this from, but it was one of those, like, it ties into the question I'm about to ask, but maybe it was in a Joe group or something. Someone had told a story about how they had their killer whale just stocked full of figures, and they went to play in a kind of quick running creek. And they
I remember this story.
And they let it go, and they couldn't catch it.
Yes, I remember this story. What a horrific thing to happen. Like, you literally just lost all your toys in seconds. Like, and that is a disadvantage of those big, vehicle or troop capable vehicles. Is like one wrong move in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you've just lost a lot of toys. Like, yeah, you're right.
That's my little story, which is nowhere near on that scale, was Big Boa. He's one of those characters that no one really likes, but I had this affinity for him. He had boxing gloves and all that. And we were on what we call a family vacation, aka going to see grandma. And we had one of those old old Woody van, like an old Plymouth or something, with the windows that you had to pull that little clip and push, and it would open a little flap. I didn't know they were open, and I had this little pillow that I'd set on the windowsill, and I'd make him play, and he fell off behind the pillow and out the window. And I just watched him almost in slow motion hit that concrete and just scatter into pieces as we were driving along. I was devastated.
Oh, that sucks, man.
I didn't know if you had any kind of stories of like something just, oh no, just something happening where you'd lost an action figure or.
Yeah, I do actually. A handful of childhood action figures disappeared and were never found again. And there's never been a story, like, it was one of those things where you don't even know how they disappeared. You don't remember losing them. A lot of these end up being tied to my brother's side of things, and he was 2 years younger than me. So My brother, for example, the day I got Squid Head from the Return of the Jedi line, he got the Sand Person. That Sand Person didn't survive with us into adulthood, even though the rest of our Star Wars figures, barring, there was another one I think that didn't make it. I can't remember which one it was, but the Sand Person disappeared entirely. Don't know what happened to him. My brother also had his own 1984 Storm Shadow. I had mine. He had his.
Right.
His was bought about a year later. His Storm Shadow never made it to adulthood. And he kept his stuff in better condition than me. If you actually look at his stuff pound for pound, figure for figure, in any line, his stuff is actually in much better shape. Mine wasn't abused, but I actually played with my toys. I have a theory that Jonathan didn't play with them. He set them up and looked at them because eventually he got obsessed with role-playing miniatures.
Right.
So that tells you kind of where his mindset was. It was like, put them in a pose and then look at them, you know?
Well, why play with mine when I can just play with my older brothers?
Good point. So his Storm Shadow didn't make it. But I distinctly know that he had one just like I did. Mine did, and you can tell it's my original because boy, he's yellow and you know he's got loose knees and everything like that. But yeah, like the Sand Person disappeared. We never saw him again, and we didn't realize he was gone until we looked up one day and it was like, oh, Sand Person's gone. My G.I. Joe Mark I Vamp disappeared. Still have the clutch that went with it, straight arm clutch, but the Vamp was gone and it was complete. And piecing it back together, we think now, looking back now, I think the next door neighbor actually stole it out of our garage. And then because he claimed it was a mail away. Like, no, now looking back, I think he ganked it. But there are things like that where certain pieces just, even though we kept so much of it, certain pieces didn't survive. And then to your point about fragility, that's the way I found out about the real Ghostbusters was I took my brand new Peter Venkman out into the backyard and I dropped him 2 feet to the ground and it broke off the spinner handle for the proton pack. And it was like, my God. And so I had to beg and beg and beg my dad to come to go get me another one. And we did. I finagled it out of him. And then after that, all 4 of the Ghostbusters stayed in my room. And those were the only that and the Slimer Green Ghost were the only things I ever had from that line. Because I gave up on the line at that point. I was like, I don't like having to tiptoe around these toys.
Right.
You know, because some kids wouldn't care and they'd bust up the proton packs and then still, you know, keep playing with the figures. And it's like Ghostbusters is about throwing that Neutrona wand around. And if I don't have that, even though I could imagine it, it's the knowledge that I broke the thing that simulates it that bums me out. So I couldn't.
It's when a toy line is reliant on a gimmick and the gimmick breaks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same thing with, like Silverhawks, you know, all they had was their gimmick. It was like click and you know. So that was a shame.
Yeah. Silverhawks with a gimmick like that, it makes me think of when little kids are like, hey, watch this. And they do something and you're like, oh, wow. That's cool. But Brian Dillingham sends in a $2 super chat with no message. Thank you, Brian. I've been watching the chat to see if anything has popped up. I don't know if that was sent in error or not, but I do appreciate it.
Brian tends to send super chats that don't have a message. That is a common Dillinghamism. So
I see. So speaking about missing action figures, I know exactly what you're talking about, where you're like, no, I had that, and you have no recollection of where it went. My running theory on that is either A, neighborhood friend with sticky fingers, that you may have only had over to the house once or twice, or it was that delicious 80s plastic and a dog got a hold of it and your parents are like, and just tossed it and didn't tell you because they didn't want to have that conversation of, but why'd you throw it away?
We had the one I hated was when, this is a typical family thing, where your parents invite over their friends and their friends bring their kids with them that you've never met.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
there's like an age disparity, and they're like, yeah,
Yes.
they're 8 and 5, they'll get along great.
It's a special one-time visit of people you've only barely heard about, that they only see once every 6 years or something.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're like, now remember, let them play with your toys and share. And it's like, Mom, and that's how my Toy Biz 1989 Michael Keaton Batwing got its rear, one of its rear fins snapped off. And that was a brand new toy. That's how, a girl ate a bunch of saltine crackers and then decided, she looked over at my suction cup Garfield and decided to lick the suction cup crackers in her mouth. And, you can't ever look at that thing the same way again. Yeah. And even with, it kind of gets back to the whole thing with, the dog Scruffy, the dog that ate Star Wars figures. It's, you stop playing outside you stop bringing your toys outside to play with other kids because they've got that crazy dog and they've learned to live with it and just don't care because they don't take care of their toys anyway. But you don't want their dog to get a free meal from your stuff because, it's hard to convince your parents to buy you an action figure here and there. So yeah, those were kind of the trials and tribulations of, the action figure generation. I include that in anything from 1970s Mego all the way through the late 90s with kids that actually bought action figures. We all had this collective experience like that, where it was like, oh God, I hope the neighbor's dog isn't out, or I hope my dog isn't out, or I hope I stay away from that well this time and don't drop Snaggletooth into it. Like we had this one incident where the same kid who had the dog that ate Star Wars toys, excuse me, he invited me over one day. It's not really inviting over back in the 80s. It was just more, I walked across the driveway and we started hanging out.
Is so-and-so home?
Yeah. And he handed me, he had just gotten Hoth Luke Skywalker. I barely had any Star Wars toys at this point. But he had Hoth Luke Skywalker, and I walked over there. I had already learned my lesson of walking over there without anything because of his dog, right?
Right.
He handed me a Imperial Snowtrooper. Now, if you understand what Roger was like, within 5 minutes of owning a figure, Roger didn't have the accessory anymore. So his Snowtrooper and his Luke were without any weapons, which, whatever, fine. It's his stuff, not mine, right? We go over to the front porch. And his dad had just put out the fireplace ashes in a corrugated metal bucket. Right. So, because we had wood burning fireplaces in these houses in this neighborhood, as well as central heat. But we had these wood burning fireplaces. I think we had central heat. It's hard to remember. Anyway, he had just put the ash bucket out, and the ashes were cool on the top. They were gray powder and cool. And so Roger's like, ooh, look, it's like a lunar surface. Let's go over to the lunar surface or whatever. And we go over there, and he's like, he pushes his Luke down into it because it's, it's just powder. And he goes, quicksand. And I'm like, because I'm like 5. I'm like, yeah, quicksand. And they go down to their heads or whatever. Well, then Roger pulls his up. And I mean, Luke's legs come up out like toffee, like melted toffee. And he starts laughing because he was like Sid from Toy Story. Like I immediately pulled mine out, and literally the snowtrooper's toes had just started to curl. So that snowtrooper stayed around for years. And the only reason he was able to play with it for, I say years, I'm sure Scruffy got it after a few months, but
it's years in kid logic.
Yeah. But the only reason he still had that one was because I pulled it out when I saw what happened to his Luke Skywalker. But he just tossed it aside like, well, that's what toys are for. I mean, it was shocking.
Must be nice.
One day I went into his front yard with him. It was one overcast morning I'll never forget. And back then people weren't like hounded by HOAs about their yards. So like our yards were green, but it was like a good mix of clover and other things.
Right.
And wasn't manicured.
Right. As a yard should be.
As a yard should be. And we went over into the front lawn, and there was this Admiral Akbar that he'd thrown over his house from the backyard the day before. And it was just a torso with huge teeth craters in it, one leg, and I'm like, wow, this is sad. Like, this is just sad.
Well, I mean, at least that Admiral Akbar got treated better than he did in episode 8. So there's that.
Yeah, that's true.
He had a somewhat meaningful death and emotional impact for somebody.
And like there were some near misses, like close saves. Like I remember one night at dusk, I was flying my X-wing fighter. This would have been summer of '84, spring or summer of '84, because the lightning bugs were out. And I was flying my X-wing fighter in the backyard at dusk, the front yard at dusk. And I did a barrel roll, and the canopy just fell right out because the canopies on those toys weren't very well secured. Mm-hmm. And that was the battle damage X-wing. So even though I know this now, I didn't know this then, because then I didn't even know there was a white X-wing. It had that smoky gray plastic canopy. Right. So you can imagine it hitting, the front yard at dusk. I mean, invisible, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I sweated all night. Like I barely slept. And I mean, the morning, the moment the sun came up, I was up. I was probably still in my pajamas, and I ran out the front door and to the right and immediately started looking around, and I found that canopy.
Oh, thank God.
It was a lucky near miss, because I never did find that carbonite 2 years later, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. That carbonite literally disappeared. So, yeah.
That's Wolfie. I see the super chat real quick, but I want to get this before it goes away. Jason Anderson says, "Oh man, who here remembers that abject horror of hearing your dad hear the fire up the lawnmower and running out into the yard to make sure there are no figures in it?" Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, my mom admitted a few years ago that it wasn't that I was losing Star Wars weapons; it was that I just didn't end up picking them all up in the den, and Mom would accidentally vacuum them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's like, Mom, it's like, well, son, I was a mother with 2 young sons, and your father was at work, and the chores had to get done. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. That's I'm reminded of a story that Laser Pants told on the first episode, but I can hear the lawnmower just going, and you're like, oh no, what did it hit? So
yeah,
it's a sound you never forget. You're like, please let it be a stick. Please let it be a stick.
Yeah.
So, but Wolvie762, thank you for the super chat. He says, weapons and accessories got eaten by cars quite a bit for me. Something fall into those impossible to reach areas between the seat and the center console. Gone forever. Mm-hmm. Just could not wait till I got home. Great chat, guys.
Oh yeah. I lost within seconds of having a brand new Obi-Wan Kenobi. I lost his lightsaber 6 inches underneath the couch. I took the lightsaber out and I was trying to put it back in, and it kind of got hung in my childhood fingers and kind of did a boing, 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 and flipped under the couch. Mm-hmm. And I looked under it forever, couldn't find it. My Obi-Wan Kenobi never had his lightsaber as a child. I ended up painting a toothpick baby blue and putting it in there instead. Yeah.
There's just this unlimited amount of hammer space in those areas where things just disappear.
Yeah. And then, of course, my mom lifted the couch at some point, vacuumed under it, and it was gone.
Right. So, I'm pretty sure that's where all those missing socks are going.
Yeah.
But it just that's an interesting phenomenon that you mentioned is, and we've all experienced it, where you drop something, and it's like 2 feet to the ground, at the most, and then suddenly just gone.
Yeah, it's just poof, gone. As a matter of fact, let me see. This is my childhood Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I don't know if this is going to show up on camera. I've since given him another vintage lightsaber that wasn't in great shape. I know, yes, I took the I took the toothpick out at some point. But I don't know if you can see that. It's going to be really hard to see, but you can see that blue tinge in his arm, in the arm slot.
Yep.
That right underneath the lever for the that's the paint.
Going in and out and all that.
You see it right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the paint that I used, and it kind of got all over his thing. But, you know, he's mine. So
that's right. That's things like that make it your Obi-Wan versus an Obi-Wan.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have a number of Obi-Wans now, but that one will always be mine. So yeah.
Yeah, I find much like your friend Roger, as soon as I opened something, the weapons were gone almost every time.
That was like that for me early on with Star Wars and some of the early G.I. Joes, but I started to get better about it because it was so frustrating, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that's Jeff Hicks had a story. I don't think he told it on his episode, but he's told it in the past, and I can relate very much to it, where he lost a Luke Skywalker figure at a cousin's house that he saw like every decade. Like he had just got it, left it there, and gone forever. For me, very similar. A lot of my toys I would get from my grandma. Like we'd go visit her, and she'd take us to Big Lots or whatever store. So I'd open them at her house, and if the accessories got left at her house, they were just gone.
Right.
They're you know, because you'd come back. Oh no, I left it next to the television. Well, grandma cleaned, and it's gone.
Yep.
So, it's an interesting kind of phenomenon that happens.
Yeah.
Time and place dictates a lot. Or if I was one of those kids. I think I had maybe 2 birthday parties at a public area, but I was insistent to not open I would open the wrapping paper, but I would not open the toy in public, because I was like, no, if I open it, I'm going to miss something. But I had this friend that routinely every year, it was either Chuck E. Cheese or McDonald's, he'd have a public birthday party, and we'd go, and he would rip open his toys in these public areas. And then I was one of those kids that never knew when it was time to leave. And I'm one of those adults that never knows when it's time to leave. But I would be one of the last kids at the party, and he'd be frantically searching around in like the play areas or whatever, looking for his toys. And it's like, why would you like? And it wouldn't be something like, oh, it's I don't know, not that we had He-Man, but it wouldn't be like a He-Man with one sword. It would be like a Beast Wars Transformer that had a lot of parts that you can remove.
Right.
So there'd be multiple pieces missing, and it's like, what? And he, you know, just to use Dinobot as an example, like he would open up Dinobot and then hand it off to one of the kids at the party to go play with. And, you know, Lord love him, you know, he was really big on sharing, I guess, but to me, it makes my skin crawl. Like, why would you give it to some kid that, you know, you're not really friends with, but he's here because he's part of the class kind of thing, and now stuff's missing.
I was not, because of the way I saw how other kids treated their toys, it was very, very rare that I ever knew somebody that I was comfortable handing a toy to. And I'm sure that made me a real pill half the time. But on the flip side, those kids never had a problem with me handling their toys. Like, they didn't even worry about it. Now, maybe it's because they didn't care, but they never got a broken toy back from me. I'll put it that way. Like the toy was in the same condition it was in when I encountered it. So,
did you have a lot of kids at school that'd be like, hey, like not necessarily trade, but like, can I borrow your blah 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 if I let you borrow my this or that, and when you give them back, it's like, why is he missing an arm?
Well, that's the funny part, is I never ended up trading my toys to some people, but I did have a kid who just let me borrow his Boulder Hill for an entire weekend, and he was a kid that didn't live in our neighborhood. He went to school with me, so I had to bring it back, you know, one day, and but I brought it back in the exact same condition he gave it to me in, so it was all good. But yeah, like I remember one time the kid next door, his brother, he was adopted, and his brother was older than him by several years, and his brother brought down all these Star Wars toys from the top of his closet that were from the Star Wars Empire era, which I'd never seen before. The cardboard Bespin Freeze Chamber playset, a white X-Wing fighter, a snow speeder, which I'd always dying for a snow speeder, a I kind of ragged out at, but they were in much better condition than the ones Roger had because Roger was a terror. And then one day I ended up getting like a bunch of the newer Joes at the time, like the Bats droid and the characters from that time frame. I can't remember what they all were. Bats was definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger said, we should trade. And so I traded for, because I liked Star Wars more than G.I. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And I traded for that snow speeder and his ragged out AT-AT and the white X-Wing and a few figures or whatever. And it was about, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours. And then, I realized I'd been rooked, or whatever. Because these things weren't in perfect condition. I mean, they were, And so I went back and, Roger didn't want to give me back my stuff. And, and it was, but again, it was like nowadays, I would stick to a pledge, but he took advantage of a younger kid's lack of knowledge of giving him stripped out stuff for, superior stuff that by that time I was keeping all the accessories and holding on to them. So like my Bats was brand new with all of his, stuff. And, he basically tried to rob me is what he did.
Right. Yeah. It's highway robbery.
Yeah. And so the moms had to get involved and, the one mom knew that Roger was a problem, but she also had to, save face. And so, it was like, well, Michael, you take your stuff and get out of here. She's like, and I don't want to see anybody trading again. And this isn't going to happen anymore. And, I'm sitting there. Thankfully, he hadn't had them long enough to lose the accessories. So I got everything back.
Yeah.
But that was the one time where I was like, yep, never again. So
yeah, that's really quickly. Will McLaughlin says he traded his polar battle bear for a Wolverine. That night, the kid's mom came to my house and made me trade it back.
Yeah. Even the parents knew what was worth more than the other thing.
Right, because they paid for it.
Yeah.
No. World Made a Cardboard has a super chat for us, though. Thank you, by the way. He says, any pocket money successes and failures?
Well, I can't really remember which things I had pocket money for at the time in the 80s. I will say that I can tell you when my parents, like my mom, was willing to buy me a figure here and there, which ones I felt like were a big success. It was virtual pocket money. It was, this is your ask for the month or whatever.
Right.
And, the Silverhawks was a big miss. That was like, oh, what a waste of, that was a more expensive action figure too, because it was, a new line and it was a larger scale. And that was a big woof. As far as successes go, I mean, as much as I never got into the full line of figures, I was still living in England. This was 1992, and I used my allowance money at a local newsagent in one of the shops at the village near my house. It was within walking distance. It was called Walton, and Walton is now apparently a much bigger little town than it used to be, from everything I've heard. I went down to the local newsagent and I bought the very first X-Men Toy Biz Nightcrawler figure that had shown up. And yeah, I mean, he had some suction cup gimmicks and stuff like that, but still, he was a good-looking figure. He looked like Nightcrawler. He had the sword. He had decent articulation for that time.
And bendy tail.
Yeah, and the prehensile tail. I thought that was a nice win. I've still got him. He's great. He's a great figure. 89 Batman was that was almost like real Ghostbusters, the Toy Biz 89 Batman, because I got him with allowance money and that stupid retractable belt hook thing.
Right, yeah.
That thing got stuck within like 2 hours of me, playing with it, and was just this big string that hung out in front of him. Yep. Fortunately, I was able to go to Kmart and take it back and swap it for another one because it was broken. But after that, it was like real Ghostbusters, where I never used the feature. I have a childhood 89 Batman that's got like a mint mechanism. it's like tight as a snare drum. Like it's never been used because I was so paranoid at that point that it was a faulty thing that I just never used it. So,
and Will McLaughlin clarifies for us. He says it was winter and we were playing on a snow mound, and the trade was his idea. That tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nobody assumed you were the one that proposed the trade.
No.
It's just kids are kids, and they do silly stuff.
Yeah, especially in that scenario where you have a green Wolverine versus the bear. It's like, oh yeah, that in a kid's brain that makes sense. That's what I want because it's snowing right now.
Yeah, and that's where I go sometimes with the mysterious missing Storm Shadow and Tusken Raider. I start to think that maybe Jonathan may have traded for something, and knowing Jonathan at that time in his life, and even now he's got, he can have weird ideas about things like, he goes through these phases where material possessions aren't anything to him and stuff, and so then he including other people's, he'll trade he used to, in high school, he used to trade when I was in college and he was still in high school and I was half a continent away, he would he would loan my books to his friends. And then when I come home and my books are missing or whatever.
Why is there a Hot Pocket stain on the front?
Well, no, he wouldn't have even gotten them back. Oh. And I'd be like, get my books back. And he'd be like, they're your books, you get them back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't even know this person. He was like that. So sometimes I wonder if like he traded his Storm Shadow at school for like a bag of gumdrops or something, or,
hey man, I really need a pencil.
Yeah. And again, they could have just gotten lost, or maybe even Roger stole them. Who knows? But because he stole my vamp, so maybe he stole other stuff too. I don't know, but it's hard to say. There will never be an answer to it. But they are the great mysteries of the French family childhood. Yeah.
Right. Now, speaking of just things being broken, and well, we got a super chat from Lio. Thank you, Lio. He says that monster figure is from Soma Monster Man. Okay, he's called Muckman. That's a variant that I have. Well,
nice.
I wish I could find his arms. That's the thing. Like when I found him, brief story. Everyone's well aware I lost 99% of my figures to a yard sale. Visited my mom a few months ago, and she's like, "No, I still have a couple bags of your stuff." Oh, sweet. So he was in there. And I had to dig through a whole bunch of stuff. He didn't even have his legs where I found him. I had to find those legs in a separate like part of the house. So I wish I could find his arms. I got him for like 25 cents at a yard sale or something. He was just really cool. But so that's that Soma Monster Man collection. Okay. I'm gonna have to remember that or take a screenshot of it. Maybe I can find an eBay listing for just the arms, but I doubt it. We were talking about things going missing, and all that. And it was mentioned on a previous Retroblasting live stream, but outside versus inside toys. Like if there was a definitive, like, I'm not taking this outside, or I'm, no holds barred, everything goes outside, everything stays inside kind of thing.
Yeah. Ghostbusters ended up staying inside forever because I took them outside and they busted up. G.I. Joe went outside, but never near the creek again. After the hovercraft incident. G.I. Joes tended to go outside fairly regularly. He-Man, not so much, oddly enough. They were my brother's toys. So He-Man and Ninja Turtles and I think Thundercats went outside once or twice, but not often. Star Wars figures occasionally would go outside on the back driveway wall. And Transformers never went outside. They were already too fragile. They never went outside. I'm trying to think, like, because He-Man was robust enough to go outside, but I just don't recall us doing that very often. I really don't. And no scuba. I didn't have a sandbox. I think we had a sandbox briefly. We were more of the kids that had the the plastic kiddie pool that they would fill up with the garden hose. The sandbox, we didn't really have one of those. I can't remember why.
Sandboxes are only sandbox in name and factual at reality. This is a fact, not an opinion. It's the neighborhood litter box for stray cats.
Yes, that is true. And if it rains and the thing leaks, then it's wet sand. And, if you don't put the lid back on it. Yeah, we never ended up having a sandbox of any. I feel like at one time we might have when I was real little. But if it did happen, it was back then where my mind can't quite focus on it. So
yeah, that was Michael or Jason Anderson says an outdoor sandbox is a litter box in waiting.
Yeah, it's true.
Michael Schaefer says unless you had a lid. So we had a sandbox briefly. It was and I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. It was the Fisher Price one shaped like a turtle. And it had a turtle shell lid that went on it, which we used to sled in, even though it wasn't very good because it had a lot of grooves in it. And we had that very briefly. It ended up cracking at the bottom, so rainwater would get in and just nasty. But you were talking about the kiddie pool, and I mentioned this. You being Retroblasting proper had a live stream about Batman the animated series, or at least Batman through the decades. And I told the story, but I want to tell it again because super chats only let you tell so much. So I had the animated Batman or animated Batmobile. Sorry, the one that you would pull the back out and it would turn into kind of a small Batwing. And we had a kiddie pool, the one that you get at Lowe's or whatever. It's very thin, it folds down or whatever. You have to basically it's held up on its own water is what keeps the form. And so in my brain, I was like, okay, cool. I'm 10 maybe at the time, playing with it, and in my brain I'm like, all right, so what's going to happen is Batman's going to fly off this cliff and he's going to eject the Batwing partway through and the Batmobile's going to crash into the water and all this kind of stuff. In my brain, cool, perfect.
Right.
For those that don't know, the back of that Batmobile are sharper than any Lego you've ever stepped on. And so I do the whole thing. He flies off, the wing pops out of the back, I drop the Batmobile, it lands prongs down into the bottom of the pool and just punctures these two giant holes. So I'm standing there, the water's draining out, I'm freaking out, and I get grounded.
Yeah.
So, and that was the last time we ever had a kiddie pool.
Yeah. This kiddie pool was the hard plastic one that just sat on the concrete. Like it didn't have an inflatable kind of thing. It was kind of sad. But yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not getting to Soma Monster Man. Never mind. This is basically a dog toy. It's just hollow plastic, and it's that kind of rubbery, like squishy stuff. So maybe that's why they're so expensive. I don't know. But so let's see here if I can find a pregunta, if you will. So now you've mentioned Jonathan before, and previous stories, previous shows. How frequently did the two of you play together versus you played but separately?
We played together a lot. Our friends at our school was a good distance away by driving. My mom had to take us there every morning and stuff, and so during the week, and so we had the next door neighbors' kids, but like I described, they it was only the one kid, Roger, and he was kind of a pain. And my parents revealed to me as an adult that they had caught him one time stabbing our collie dog with a pen. So he was like, like he was troubled. And they didn't tell me that till we were adults or whatever, but they had to deal with it. But and thank God Jenny survived and lived a long life and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, but Jonathan and I would play.
He's definitely on a watch list somewhere.
Oh yeah, right. Jonathan and I would play regularly together. Most of the playtime really came down to we would set up these elaborate Castle Grayskull versus Snake Mountain army battles, and we really didn't have it was odd because both of us would play both sides at the same time. So we would be creating scenarios or, battle scenarios and who's going to try and take what castle next and, what gimmicky characters are going to form a group and go. And so it wasn't really like Jonathan behind his play set and me behind mine and us, it was more of like us kind of putting a story together, you know,
it was
as
a co-op instead of versus.
yeah. We both agreed that it would be cool to pit these two huge groups of characters together. And I think the reason that happened that way a lot was with that toy line was because Jonathan had both play sets. He had the good guy and bad guy play sets. Yeah, you know, occasionally Jonathan would play with Star Wars figures with me and stuff like that. Occasionally Jonathan and I would, you know, in the mid to late 80s, we'd play G.I. Joe a lot. And I have footage of us with the Flying Fighters from Hasbro on Christmas morning flying around. Captain Power, you know, we split down the middle on Captain Power. He had the evil jet and I had he had the evil jet and I had the good jet. And, you know, we would play that. But most of the time, even with that, we were both playing in front of the TV with the videotapes. We weren't actually playing against one another. So yeah, we would play a lot together with the action figures and things like that. But a lot of times it was co-op. It was like Jonathan and I would, you know, we'd both have our favorite Joes trying to climb the stairs, you know, to get to the top. And then once we were up there with the, you know, the bad guys, we would figure out what the bad guys were going to do and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was kind of the structure, honestly.
VW Matt, thank you for the super chat. He asks, he says, it's always action figures. Did either of you ever get into Hot Wheels and or Matchbox?
Yes. Very early on in my childhood, that was where everything started for me, was diecast cars. I loved Dukes of Hazzard and cars and sports cars and vehicles, and that's why I had such high hopes for Transformers. But like, I had the Hot Wheels Stow and Go. I still have all my childhood Hot Wheels. And as you might have seen, VW Matt, I did a whole video retrospective on the Hot Wheels crack-ups, which I still have. But once Star Wars came into my life, I really wanted to play with action figures. I just became an action figure kid, even to the degree that, and I tried not to insert this bias into my channel when I can remember not to. It's a natural reflex, I should say, not so much a bias, it's a reflex. Because of what I'm naturally attracted to from a toyetic perspective, two things tend to get lost in the shuffle. Diecast cars have their own collector culture, so I don't really see them as neglected on my channel so much. They're just a totally different thing, right? But two arguably action figure toy genres that do get neglected on my channel until I look up and realize it and then run off and try and do a video are dinosaurs and robots. So transforming robots and dinosaurs of any variation tend to get lost. That's kind of why Inhumanoids required me borrowing Reclaimer's Vintage Toys entire collection to do, because Inhumanoids was of a scale and a size and a type where it was like collecting a dinosaur toy line. They were beasts, they were demons, they were creatures, but it would be like collecting a dinosaur creature line, because I was always about human action figures and vehicles and play sets. Like that was my thing. I wanted to like Transformers a lot, but they just didn't work out for me. And I loved Voltron, but again, Voltron had a human pilot element. I don't have an aversion at all to sentient robots. I don't. It's not a story problem for me. I think it's a toy attractor for me. Nowadays, I have a huge affinity for very well engineered Japanese robots and stuff like that. I really see how great they are. But as a child, my thing was like, you know, I literally would rather play with Dick Tracy or Robin Hood as characters than I would with Megatron.
Right.
You know?
Well, Megatron kind of has that the old dick trigger.
Yeah, he does.
But so for me, my dad was really into Matchbox when he was a kid. So he tried to get me into like Hot Wheels and things when I was young. And I there was probably like much like yourself, Michael, when I think of Christmas, I think of this was the blank Christmas, this was that Christmas or whatever. And it was like this Christmas of like second grade. I got a lot of Hot Wheels, and he pulled out some. I don't know how old it was, but a Hot Wheels track with like the loop to loop and all that. But it was elevation based because by that point they had the batteries that they launched, but it was you had to pull it up. And we spent the whole Christmas just with that thing on the fireplace mantle, just zoom. Well, I should say the faux fireplace because it wasn't a real fireplace, and we just spent the whole Christmas doing that. And that was pretty short lived,
right?
But it was fun. There is a story here by the Dragon Reborn I wanted to touch on. That's a two-parter. He says, my mother picked up a falcon, tauntaun, and some figures from a St. Vincent de Paul that were donated to the shop by some other kids' parents. The next morning, the Star Wars was gone because my mother returned the toys to the kids that had owned them because they were upset. And that's one of those ones where it's like, no matter what side of that argument you pick, you're kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Everything's falling around and around.
It wasn't a Sentinel, was it?
No, those are they're laying on the floor. I refuse to stand them.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, it's like, man, that really sucks. But it's like those kids probably didn't want those things donated. So it's like it was nice of your mom to give them back to them. But at the same time, it's like that's a situation you don't want to find yourself in. It's some like in that situation, like, do I keep them because I want them? Do I give them back? Their mom should have, I don't know. That's just a bad situation to be in, and I feel for you.
Right.
So, there was another one I wanted to read, and it's kind of jumped on me here. Oh well. All right. Well, I can't find it. So, someone brought up Allowance actually again. Where was that at? There it is. Oliver Belmonte. He says, when you were kids or in your early teens, what was one of the 80s toys action figures you wanted so badly that you had to save up from your allowance? And much like yourself, I didn't get an allowance. It was kind of you get toys when you get them kind of thing, unless grandma was involved, because grandma was what we called the great spoiler.
Right.
But it was kind of like my parents knew that if I got allowance, I'd spend them on toys anyway.
Right.
And I was like, oh, we're going to the weekly run to Walmart or whatever. Like going to Toys R Us was a luxury.
Right.
But it was like, okay, you can pick something from these 3 shelves kind of thing.
Interesting.
I didn't know if there was anything kind of a similar situation, or I guess for the lack of a better word, it'd be in this situation, since we're both kind of in the same boat, it would be what was something that you asked for a lot that you eventually got.
Something I asked for a lot that I eventually got. I guess it would probably be the Millennium Falcon, because that was one that I'd wanted from the moment I saw the Star Wars in 1982, and I finally got it my 6th birthday in 1984. I just, it was a centerpiece, and I remember distinctly that before I had the Falcon, I was literally using a Cool Whip container as the Falcon. So I desperately needed the Millennium Falcon, and so finally getting that toy was a very big win for me, for sure. Yeah,
and I find the need versus want for children, like it's hard to kind of explain that to your parents, like, Mom, I'm using the Cool Whip container for my Falcon, like I need a Millennium Falcon, versus you really want one. But I find, at least looking back, a lot of the things, it's like, no, actually I needed that because if I'm playing with X-Men and I need a Wolverine, they're like, oh, just use your imagination. I'm like, Mom, I can't pretend that Cyclops is Wolverine. It's impossible.
Right. Exactly.
But, oh boy, the chat's hopping right now.
Oh, is it?
Let's see. In a good way. It's just going quickly. Golden Age says the original Transformers came with little pilots. They really changed the play pattern. I'm assuming he means the what was that, Diaclone? Is that who made them in Japan? And Takara?
Yes, Diaclone was Takara, according to Thomas, is the proper pronunciation. I keep trying to put that into my mind.
Yeah.
And
as soon as I said Takara, I was like, no, that's not how it's said.
Diaclone was the major line, and then Micro Change was the other line.
Okay. So I think that really would have changed a lot. Like if Spike had to pilot Optimus or pilot Bumblebee,
right?
That's why I liked Gundam so much as a kid, because it's like, oh, these are robots and they're awesome, but there's a human inside of it that someone has to pilot this thing.
Yes,
like it requires a lot of skill. Where sentient robots they're cool, nothing against 3PO and R2 and all of them, but it's like you only have emotions because they're programmed into you. Now that's me as a normie not knowing the full lore of Transformers and all that, but I'm just I always look at Transformers like cool in concept. I really love Beast Wars, but I'm at the same time I'm like, why? Like, what do you look like if you don't have something to emulate? You know what I mean? Like I have Rhinox and Dinobot. Well, Dinobot's in front of the camera, so I just use him. It's like, so they set up why he looks the way he does in the show, but it's like, what do you look like if you don't have something to transform into? Do you just hang out in robot mode all day, or
right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird because the appeal of the original Transformers for me in 1984 was that brief moment where, and I don't hate the first 2 seasons of the show. It's when the movie happens, the animated movie, that I really got off the rails with it. And I've already talked about that ad nauseum, and I won't go into it now. But that brief moment, that 6-month window or 4-month window or whatever it is in child time, where there was no mythology, like there was no animated show. It was just, these are cars that really look like diecast cars, and they turn into robots, and they're all different. And some of them are allegedly good guys, and some of them are allegedly bad guys. And it's like, that is awesome. Like my first Transformer ever was Wheeljack. I probably picked him out because I was naturally attracted to the Lancia Stratos, not even knowing what that car was at the time. And I thought they were the coolest concept for a toy. It's like a toy that looks like a model car to anybody that walks into my room that's like an adult that doesn't really know what he's looking at or she's looking at. But I know that it's a robot. I thought that was the coolest thing. It just so happened that the toys didn't offer a lot of versatility outside that. I know imagination fills gaps, but for me, despite being very careful with my toys, they broke a lot, and that was disheartening because my other toys didn't break. And so I just finally, and then I still thought they were cool. I was really chomping at the bit to get Ultra Magnus. That's how late into the game I went with it. But I hadn't seen the movie yet. I'd only seen the commercials with the toy Ultra Magnus. And so when the movie came out and we went to see it, I was like, what is this? You know? And then at that point, I just kind of, now as an archival piece of entertainment, I own the movie, you know, and have it. But it's part of my history. It's not, I'm not qualifying it as a loved part of my history. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I find a lot of people have the experience of that movie and seeing it in theaters and all that. I don't, but I'm only like really familiar with that movie through osmosis. I don't think I've seen it all the way through, but for me, that my gut punch came from the G.I. Joe movie.
Just a second. Hey, Master Farr.
Yeah.
I'm never going to apologize to Scott Knightlick, and I'm not going to delete that video ever.
As you shouldn't.
So whatever tree you're barking up, you're wasting your breath and your energy and your time. Get out of this live stream now.
No, he's already been blocked. So because I stand by my friends. So I'm not some rando who's never commented or shown up on my channel before who shows up just to sling mud. So you can go fuck yourself, bud. Michael's a lot more polite than I am. So, but for me, like as you're aware through the conversations we've had, I'd never seen the G.I. Joe TV show, and so for me, I didn't even know there was a movie. I was like 12, 11, maybe. We rented it from Blockbuster, and I remember begging for it, and we rented it, we watched it, and I was so dismayed because the characters didn't look like the ones that I had. They did like I didn't know who any of them were. Like I didn't know like anything. Like I'd never even heard of Serpentor.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the hell is this guy?
Yep.
Like and I didn't know that Cobra had the battle helmet. I only had the hooded version.
So
I was like, why does Cobra look like? I was so confused, and then I was once a man for like the last half of the movie.
Yes.
And it just, oh god, like watching it now because I've purchased, because we're both big. Well, you're much more vocal about it than I am because I don't really get much of a chance to talk about it on my channel. But I'm also a huge proponent for physical media. So I've went back and purchased all of the DVDs of G.I. Joe, and I've watched all of them to include the movie. And now I see kind of the journey of events leading up to it, and I'm like, okay, it makes a little more sense now. But I want to know. I guess I kind of have a hot take. I think Duke should have died. Like the whole, oh, he's gonna be okay kind of thing. It takes away the emotional punch of it. Like he got stabbed in the heart with a snake. Like,
and I'm not trying to change the subject here real quick, but I'm just replying to what Bobby Collins is saying. The Patreon message from my channel today, right before, a few hours before I jumped on here with Sal, it's already been shared on 4chan. So there are moles in the Patreon that are paying to hate us. As far as I'm concerned, they can still keep throwing their dollars at us because there's nothing I say in those videos that's secret. It just so happens to be on Patreon for patrons to use. This patron has decided to use it to betray everybody's privileges. So anyway, sorry, Sal.
No, it's fine. It's things that need to be addressed anyhow.
Yeah.
So, and if the time presents itself, then go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's such a weird concept that it's not really too far removed from the people, and I won't name names, but the people who hate things in Hollywood, but they still go opening night so they can review the movie for their channel, and it's like you're still giving them your money, guy. Like you're not proving anything because, as we've seen in the corporate world, that they don't care about reviews. They care about look how much money this made. So, it's oh well. So, and 4chan of all places, freaking 4chan. Never has there been a what is it? A hive of scum and villainy.
Yes, it's a you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. That's it.
Yeah, that's. Remember when I was an edge lord in my early 20s and hung out on 4chan.
Right.
But ay. So we are at the 2.5 hour mark. So I don't know. Again, I'm giving you the.
Sir, I know that you've got stuff in your near future since we work off different shifts. So you might be having to get ready for something here the next few hours that I'm not aware of. So
no, sir. This is my off night. The only thing I'm doing is painting.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I have I'm now that we're rapidly approaching October, I'm purveying the stores for things like, oh, I could paint this for a diorama, I can do that, and I'm like, I'll just do it for the channel, and it'll be spooky videos for October. Unfortunately for myself, again, I lack any type of willpower and impulse control. I now have more projects than there are days in October. So now I'm like, oh god, what am I going to do with these things? So some of them being, let me grab one that I'm actually have done something to. Have I done anything to this one yet? I have. So I found these like wooden coffins on Amazon. And so I came in a pack of 6. So I have this one, which looks pretty nondescript. I haven't done anything to it, except on the inside I've added all these scratch marks. Make it look like someone's been buried alive. So I'm slowly doing things like that. to these things, which I have these ideas that come to me. I'm like, oh, I need to do that. I need to do this. And then I start doing it and realize that I'm sitting in my bed watching YouTube doing it, not filming it. So such is life. But, oh, well. Scuba Pete actually has an idea. He says Fright Zone for Halloween, maybe?
Oh,
I think
that's
that
not a
might be
bad
directed
idea,
at you.
actually. That's not a bad idea. Yeah, I could
Mhm.
do that. Yeah, I can plan that. Yeah, Fright Zone for Halloween. Done. Scuba Pete, great idea. Done. That's what we're doing. I
That's
will make that happen.
I find myself doing that. Like I've had a Mezco figure for weeks now, but I'm like, oh no, I'm like the thumbnail for that would be great for a Halloween video. So I'm like, kind of pushing that off till Halloween. Just like I
Mhm.
showed you the picture of the Turbo Man that I
Yep.
got, and I'm like, I'm filming his video, but it's not going to come out till Christmas.
Mhm.
So I'm always, I, I don't know if that's like kind of, I don't know what you would call it, passe maybe, but I'm like, I have to come up with themed videos because I think I think last year I did an Ewok review for Christmas.
Right.
So not exactly my strongest work, but well. So I want to talk about play sets for a little bit,
Okay.
if you're willing.
All right. Go ahead.
Um, you had mentioned uh, that you didn't really have play sets in the traditional sense. Much like
Mhm.
myself, I had very limited exposure to real play sets. What were there any? I guess the blow mold kind of play sets like the
Mhm.
Timmy Battle Mountain, or did you have anything like that when you were growing up?
No, I never did. I saw them occasionally, but I never had them. I loved the Guns of Navarone playset that
Hmm.
Marks reused
Yeah.
and retitled a bazillion times. But I never had any of those. Other kids occasionally would have those, and I'd see them, but I never had them. Yeah.
Mhm. That's that Guns of Navarone. That's the big black mountain thing. I
Mhm.
That's a place that I actually had. I got it at a yard sale, and it was pretty much gutted. Like it had like the platforms on the backside, but anything that was yellow was gone. If you
Right.
look at the photo, and to me that was like the bad headquarters where Cobra hung out.
Uh huh.
Um, and I had the Timmy Battle Mountain. Those were the playsets I usually had. But my favorite thing that I had, and I was thinking that I hadn't been a customizer for very long, but
Hmm.
looking back on it, one of the things I used the most was you remember those kind of white vinyl curtains that were on a rod that you pull them and they shoot up real fast,
Right.
blackout curtains, I guess. I had one of those that I would roll out because I had drawn like a lake and grass and all that kind of stuff on it. That was my kind of play mat.
Uh huh.
Um, but I just wanted to point out something kind of funny I saw happen. Drew G says, "What is Fright Zone?" And
Huh.
Bobby Collins says it's a $200 snake puppet.
Yeah, pretty much. Reclaimers was able to find for me one where it really had never been assembled. It had been opened, but it had never been assembled. And the snake puppet, I've never seen a more pristine snake puppet. Like I
Mhm.
was like, wow. So I'm never going to be displaying that out in the open air. I'm going to use it for the video and then put the snake puppet back in its airless bag or whatever. That you press all the air out of the bag and then
Mhm.
put it back. And but it'll be a really nice example to show on camera for sure. Then after
Mhm.
that, it's if I do display it, I'll need to find like one of those. I know some people are reproing the like.
Mhm.
I would, what I would like to have for that display is I would like to have um, a sculpted or 3D printed monster that the puppet represents, like something that's rigid that can sit in
Right.
that cave and actually look, that's what I would prefer. But I don't really have any place to actually display the fright zone right now. And that's another thing, about a collection when you start having a number of play sets and things like that is you get to a point where you go, well, like I took down Snake Mountain. I took down Snake Mountain. It used to sit right next to Castle Grayskull, and I put the Starriers base where Snake Mountain was, only
Mhm.
because I suddenly had all the Starriers for the most part, meaning all the major characters, and I wanted to display them, but I had nowhere to do so. And I was like, well, I've already got Castle Grayskull up there. That's the icon of He-Man. So I can take down Snake Mountain and then put all the Star Ears on their base up on the top shelf, kind of like I did with the Power Rangers that are right next to them. You know, so it's a way to kind of consolidate space. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to get at with the Fright Zone, is that it's like, yeah, I'll review it, but then it'll kind of go back into the box.
Right.
There's nowhere to put it. So
and that's I was able to track down one of these rubber hand puppets at Walmart. They're like $1. That's what I use for my Fright Zone.
Oh, that's nice. That's really good looking too. That's cool.
The one caveat to it is, and I've seen photos online with the snake puppet proper, but things like this, if you leave them like on the plastic, over time it'll like eat through it.
Yep. You know, that happened to me after we got this studio done. I put all of my RoboForce guys in their fortress, not realizing, even though I knew of this phenomenon, the suction cups literally started to eat lines into and it only took like a few months. And so now all of them sit on notebook paper, like these squares of notebook paper. It's so dumb. And that was a pristine fortress of steel too. So it's agonizing.
And Jeff says he's late, but he's here for this epic crossover. Thank
Jeff,
you, Jeff.
How are you, sir?
So there have been rumblings, Michael, that there may or may not be another collector's stream on
cool.
So I would expect an invite in the near future, if hypothetically speaking, if this were to happen. So, but let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Oliver Belmonte says some toy customizers made a Batman Batcave playset to the Horde Fright Zone.
Oh, yeah, that actually works out real well. I can see them doing that. Yeah. The one that's never really interested me, and it's because it's not really a playset, is the Slime Pit. It's just kind of like they call it a playset, but it's really just a gross out pedestal. It's like
it's a gimmick.
Yeah, it's like the Remco Monsters Monsterizer. It's like, I mean, it's a neat little gadget, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's again one of those things where it's like you have the slime pit, take away the slime, and then what?
Yes, exactly.
You know, it's a very so to compare apples and oranges a little bit. You have something like the slime pit where it's very much a standalone, basically skull with a hand and a bracket, versus a mini playset like Checkpoint Alpha for G.I. Joe, where it can stand by itself. So it's, you know, you need the figures for it to work, but you have it. Where Slime Pit, if you have the figures but you don't have the slime, then what do you have? You have a skull with a hand and a bracket.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So it'd be like a creepy crawler's oven with no goo to make the creepy crawlers. It just gets really hot.
Yeah, and then Bobby Collins says Slime Pit plus Grizzlor equals a worthless Grizzlor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, oh man, because I really that was why I was so mad that the Origins Grizzlor was an exclusive at first, with no guarantee necessarily of a retail release.
Right.
Because Grizzlor is the one character from the Horde that I actually like. Like, I don't hate the other ones, but I don't have any interest in them. Like, it's kind of like I can take them or leave them. But like Grizzlor, for some reason, has always just been, you know, with me. I'm like, yeah, Grizzlor. Now, see, that's a Masters of the Universe figure I can get behind. So I really wanted that one. And I was so mad because, like, I didn't really care about animation accurate Hordak or multicolored robot guardians or warriors. So I've now got this like stupid expensive figure set pre-ordered, and I just want the fuzzy guy out of it. So whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at when I got it. I was like, I really don't want the Hordak out of it. So we should have just gone halvesies and just split it.
Right. We should have. Yeah, we should have. I take Grizzlor, you take Hordak, and then we do like flip a coin for who gets what color of robot guy or whatever. Yeah.
Hindsight. But
yep.
Yeah, that's so speaking of things like Grizzlor, it just sent me down. I had a conversation with Bobby Valla, and his favorite character is Mossman.
Oh yeah.
In my video today, I talked about Flocked Panther, trying to figure out if it's worth it or not, because he's like almost twice as expensive as the regular one. And I know people want Mossman because they
Mhm.
already have Beastman. That's the same figure. They have the mace because it came with Castle Grayskull, so it's all tooled up, ready to go.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't think people are going to be willing to pay the price he's going to be for him to be flocked.
Right. Right.
So, or he'll end up being PulseCon. He'll be a PowerCon exclusive next year, probably, if he's flocked. And on top of being flocked, he also has to smell like pine because they've established that benchmark with Stinkor that he will smell like patchouli. So it's what's more important to people, him having the pine scent or being flocked.
Right.
So, but I don't know. Jason Anderson, he says, "All right, fess up. Who used their slimeless slime pit as a Jello shooter dispenser?"
See, I was so outside the slime phenomenon. You know, they have the ectoplasm and the He-Man slime and the Ninja Turtles ooze and the Toxic Avengers slime, and there was the T1, the Terminator goop, and then there was the alien acid or whatever. I was so outside of all that because if you're the kid that can't stand your figures not even having their gun, and you're the kid that can't stand a figure with a broken proton stream, you're definitely not a kid that wants to cover your action figures in gunk. And so it just did not do anything for me. It was like, nah, I have no interest, especially because you would go into the toy aisles and they would always have those little pallets of canisters on shelves, and they would always be busted into, and there would be dried gunky slime from one of those things just covering the area every time. Because kids would break into it and then dump it out. And yeah, it was not my idea of a good time. I do have 3 of the ectoplasm canisters that still have, solvent slime in there, but I don't use them for anything.
And Jason Anderson also says, someone needs to do an expose on the insidious backroom deal between 80s slime toy manufacturers and the carpet installers.
Yes.
Yeah, that was, I had some slime because in the 90s GAC was like a big thing.
Yes.
And my older brother got, it was called like Smell My GAC or whatever, it smelled like pizza or something like that. He dropped it on the carpet, and slime or anything in that form was banned from the house after that. Because it wasn't like a sectional rug, it was an installed carpet. So it was that spot on the rug smelled like pizza forever. I remember the dog laying next to the carpet and just kind of licking that spot on the carpet.
Oh,
yeah, it was definitely something. But yeah, that's the old slime. There was that, and so actually that's a good segue.
Okay.
Thinking about other toys with gimmicks, like things that required batteries, talking things or whatever. My parents were very much, I would get something, if it made sound, I'd get to hear it for about a day, and then the batteries would mysteriously, quote, die, quote.
Oh, interesting.
And then, they don't make batteries for that anymore. So,
go ahead, sorry.
I had the Dilophosaurus that made the sound, and the Velociraptor that made sound from the Jurassic Park line. And the segue for that, which please make your original point before answering this next one, was going to be bathtub toys. So I took them into the bathtub exactly once, and you can imagine how that worked out. My parents didn't have to take the batteries out after all.
Right. So, yeah, my experience with the batteries was they either accidentally got left in sometimes, and then we would find them exploded or whatever. When it came to replacing them, they only got replaced very occasionally if it was essential to its function. So, like, for example, when the batteries in my X-Wing and Millennium Falcon died, you didn't really get batteries for that again unless you switched out with toys that could only function with batteries. In other words, you cannibalized. And eventually those motors seized up temporarily until I was an adult and learned how to fix them. But your X-Wing, you could still fly it around and do stuff without the sound. Your Millennium Falcon, you could still play with 99% of the toy without the sound. But things like, Rough Riders, those little motorized trucks with the headlights and the all-terrain tires, if you didn't have a battery, it just didn't do nothing. I found an unexploded mid-1980s Energizer battery in my childhood one, and I found it in 2009. And I kept that battery. I put it in a Ziploc bag just in case it ever finally decides to leak. But I've got that signature mid-80s Energizer AA. That you talk about a nostalgia kick to the head. I know it sounds really pithy, but it's like when you see an old battery wrap logo that you haven't remembered since way back, it will unlock filing cabinets in your memory that you didn't know were possible. Like it's but like my turbo hop. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say it's just like when you see photos of old food labels, like how Doritos bags used to look.
Yeah,
with the white and the
my turbo hopper, my Tyco RC turbo hopper, that was one where it used something crazy like 16 AA's between or maybe it was a 9-volt in the RC unit itself, and then there were at least 8 or 10 AA's in the freaking car, because this was the original RC turbo hopper before they came up with the rechargeable battery packs the next year. And you would play with that thing you'd go hard on it for like 40-45 minutes or whatever, and that would be it. So that thing ended up being a real it was like once a season I could convince my parents to get batteries for that thing. And then I'd get 45 minutes, and then it'd be another 3 months. But yeah, like that's why, G.I. Joe vehicles were so appealing to parents, because they didn't use batteries for the most part. 99% of them didn't use batteries.
Just had about 1 billion missiles that you would lose.
That's true. Missiles, depth chargers, tow cables. But see, the thing about it is that the batteries in Star Wars vehicles weren't really an issue because a lot of them, especially the ones when I was growing up, I didn't have the radio controlled Sandcrawler or the radio controlled Land Speeder, which, they need batteries to function. Like if they don't, they're just props. All of my Star Wars vehicles, the battery features were cool, but ultimately optional. They were not essential. The Captain Power vehicles, on the other hand, it was battery after battery after battery. Right. Same thing with the Flying Fighters. The Flying Fighters, it's a sort of cheesy plastic jet fighter, which is really just on a handle that makes all the noises and the missile launches and stuff. That's the fun part. If you don't have that, then you can't recreate your Top Gun Iron Eagle fantasies. So, right. But that didn't take that many batteries. Like it wasn't like the RC Turbo Hopper or, even what's another good example? The Captain Power jets. They really ate them up. The Captain Power jets had batteries in like 3 different places too. You had the set in the handle, you had the set in the back. It was like, wow, man, like this is Looney Tunes.
Or like the old squirt guns, the automatic ones.
The Intertech squirt guns were a real problem. The laser tag, I didn't own it, but kids had to have like 8 batteries a gun, not to mention the battery that goes in the sensor, and then if you had extra sensors, I mean, it was lunacy. Yeah, I mean, I like it when a battery powered gimmick is cool, but I also like it when a toy line has learned how to get around it. Like that's one of the reasons why the Dick Tracy cars are so cool from the Playmates line in '90s, because they should have fit more figures and they didn't, which was derpy. But the one thing they did do is you could press down on the back axle and then roll it forward, and they had almost like a dynamo kind of setup in the back, and so the police car would make this sort of siren sound, and the gangster car would make a sound that sounds like a Tommy gun going off. And so in that sense, you kind of got the gimmick without needing it. But also what was cool about them was if you just let up on the back axle and just drove it like a normal toy car, it didn't make that noise all the time. You could do it. You could. It was actually quite ingenious the way they did it. I gotta give them a salute again for the design of those cars. They should have fit 4 characters. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. It's Bobby L. Collins says the pathos of accidentally activating a TIE fighter's engines when you're supposed to be asleep at 2 a.m.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Jason Anderson says, the look, the feel, the battery life, non-existent. Enter check. $10
Yeah.
later.
It's true. It's true.
Alrighty. Well, we're coming up here on the 3-hour mark.
All
And
right.
so I would ask again, but it's been 3 hours. I do respect your time, and you've humored me for quite a while,
No
which
problem.
I do appreciate. It's been a retroblast, if you will.
And we've been able to maintain over 70 people the entire time, going up as high as 90 something at one point, I think. So that's good.
Which is quite a feat, especially on this channel. I normally float around 20 something. So
And Wolfie is correct. The South Bend Enterprise refit battery sound effects are horrendously infamous. Like what a, it's a beautiful toy. I'll keep it on display forever, but what a mess of an electronic feature. What a mess.
Yeah. So with that, there's one game that I like to play.
Okay.
And it's you're probably familiar with it, but
Okay.
you're gonna pick a number between 5 and 12.
Okay.
And then go ahead.
Okay. I pick 5. It's my lucky number.
5. Okay. And a time of year. Fall, winter, or a specific month even.
Okay. I pick that crisp early spring.
Okay. So crisp early spring at 5 years old. Walk us through a day in the life in terms of playtime with Michael French when he's 5 years old.
Okay. I get up in the morning. I know that's Captain Obvious to start that way, but I'm priming my brain. I have a bowl of cereal. It's probably Life or some form of checks, whether it's rice checks or corn checks. And then at 5 years old, I have the options of playing with either my Mego Dukes of Hazzard General Lee with Bo and Luke, my Mego Pocket Superheroes, maybe my Hot Wheels Stow and Go, my G.I. Joe Vamp with Clutch, a handful of Star Wars action figures, but it's not. Oh, I am 5, so yeah, okay. So that means that it's after. Okay, I've started to figure out when my toys landed, so I'm kind of being specific. But so yeah, I would then sort of set up probably down in the den where I could watch cartoons because my parents probably aren't up yet, and I'd get the duck blanket out. And more than likely at that point, at 5 years old, I would really be exploring the Star Wars toys at that point. So it would be Star Wars. But you never know. I might be racing the General Lee against the G.I. Joe Vamp, across the den. Because every now and then I like to get 2 vehicles, and go like that and see.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have any vehicles yet at that point for Star Wars. I had like 1 mini rig, and that was it. So yeah, although no, that's not true, because if I'm 5 and it's a crisp spring, that means this is the spring of '84. So I had an X-wing and a Y-wing. I had an Ewok village. Yeah, totally. Then I'd have been playing with the Ewok village with the X-wing and the Y-wing. Boba Fett would have been in the battery compartment, stowing away up on the Y-wing. They would have been, getting caught in the net. Jabba the Hutt would have been off in the corner on the hearth. Waiting to, capture Luke Skywalker or capture somebody else that Luke would have to go rescue. I was this was spring, so this would have been like April. So I was a mere 3 months away from finally having a Scout Walker. But I had my speeder bikes, so, or bike. My brother had 1, so I always had 2. Yeah, it would be probably a protracted indoor battle with some rebel fighters, and then facing off against Jabba the Hutt. That would be my 5-year-old day. Yeah, in spring.
Outstanding. That's the whole innocence around it is one of the best parts. I love these stories.
Yeah, and then I would go outside into the crisp Nashville spring air where everything's very sharp and in focus.
Mhm.
and I would probably end up trying unsuccessfully once again to climb the willow tree while pretending to be Luke Skywalker on Endor. That's probably what I would have been doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that story with us and that whole thing. It's I don't know. My favorite part about the series is seeing how there he is.
He's my boy. Well, in
Boy.
any form, Bespin favorite, but he's always my boy.
He is. And I find that through all of these various conversations, and aside from Jeff Hicks, most everyone has been in the early 80s or late 70s, thereabouts when they were born. And to see that our play patterns and experiences really didn't change that much.
Yeah.
And like the way that we kind of envelop these worlds or like kind of throw ourselves into them. So it's always, I don't know, it's one of those things that I think transcends generations is playtime. So, but if there's, we've been going for 3 hours, and like I mentioned to everybody that comes on, just because you've been on the one time doesn't mean that you can't come back. But is there anything that you wish that we had spoken about and that we didn't cover?
No, I would like to, before I forget, mention that Tony at Analog Toys is doing a Pala Talk on Saturday with Matt Swafford of Reclaimers Vintage Toys at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out there for everybody, since we're all in this great toy collector game together. I hope you don't mind me doing that.
No, absolutely not. I'm very much looking forward to that myself.
Yeah.
So I'd also mention, I believe it's tomorrow for us in the States, that he has the Crazy Duchies coming on.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Is that on Jody's stream, or who is that?
I'd have to I'd have to re-verify that. I think it's going to be on Analog Toys, because he had mentioned that he wanted to have Chris Miwa and Jody on his channel.
Yeah, so I'm also trying to get Chris Miwa onto Retroblasting for a big public stream like this. So kind of like I'm trying to remember, because I do the retro talks behind the scenes, and I know you and I have done a retro talk, but you and I have done public streams on Retroblasting before, haven't we? We had.
I think maybe Iconicon.
I feel like we have, but if there hasn't been a dedicated stream with you on the public Retroblasting stream, we need to change that, because that's just you know what that is? That's just one of those nebulous misses, because you and I talk every day.
Right.
So I forget what we've done together. So I just make assumptions, not even active assumptions. So we need to do that. And it's like Scuba Pete says crazy. What's that?
I was going to say they got the link down there in the chat.
Oh, good. And the Crazy Duchies are on Analog, according to Scuba Pete. So, okay, good deal. But yeah, you and I need to do a Retroblasting live stream at some point together like this, where we just kind of pick a topic and talk about it. Like, it doesn't have to be biographical. It can be, something that we're talking about in the toy world. Doesn't even have to be controversial or divisive.
Oh, the Sentinel stream. That's the one I went on. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
We were on. I was like, I know there was something recently.
Yeah.
It's the one where that guy ganked my joke.
Right. Well, I would like to point out to Dean at All Things 80s. He says there are so many great streams these days, it's hard to get anything done. Dean, I try to tailor my streams, and Sal naturally with his format, I think, where you only have to look up if you want to. It's almost like listening to a good, radio talk show where you can actually do something else. That's what I do when I'm listening to The Way We Played. I've watched all the episodes of The Way We Played, and I will freely admit I turn it on and I watch it for a few minutes, and then I start, working on a toy restoration or, kind of cleaning up. I do a lot of studio cleaning up, and I can still hear it. And all the information really comes through audio, like obviously every now and then if I do this or something,
right.
But again, even if I'm doing this in this format, or somebody is, the great thing about this format is you're not missing the essential part of it. You can listen to it and enjoy it as much as you can watch it. So
I try to make it a podcast with optional visuals.
Yes, that's a great way to describe it. I think that's the best way to do it too.
Yeah.
Long form always should be a podcast with optional visuals, bonus feature visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's because I'm very much the same way. Like I'll put headphones in or I'll put it on the TV and listen to an old live stream or whatever and do something else.
Yep. Yep.
That's I very much I find myself doing that a lot instead of watching traditional TV shows or anything because I have to be engaged and watch it, and I'm like I need to be able to do more than one thing, especially
Exactly.
when I come to customizing. Like when I built that the Gundam, which that video is a couple weeks away, but it's done.
Yep.
I just had old live streams playing in the background while I made it, so it's wonderful. So, well, Michael, I hope to have you on again someday. Which
absolutely, you have but to ask, sir. You have but to ask.
Gondor calls for aid. That's what we should talk Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, Melinda will want to be on that one.
Oh, absolutely. That's and this may be a spoiler, but Melinda has agreed to do one of these episodes herself. But that's whenever her schedule permits. She's a very very busy individual. So I'd like to get Chris Miwa on here. Like that's the desire and the want to have everyone have these episodes, and the hours in the day sometimes don't match up. But
right.
So, but I thank you all. Thank you, Michael, especially for surrendering 3 hours of your Tuesday evening.
All right, man. I assure you, it's not a problem. And again, 2 Cents Toys is my go-to, and I'm not plugging you because you asked me to. You didn't. So everybody out there, don't think that this whole thing is led up to some kind of manipulated plug. 2 Cents Toys is where I go to get modern toy information. It's where I go. If you care about my opinion on that, then that will be of value to you. If you don't, and you just want me to shut up about that, then fine too, whatever. But this is where I go to get modern toy information about action, all the new action figures, how they're stacking up, how they rate, how they actually function. Sal is great at doing it. He has it down pat. He knows what to tell you about, and he doesn't waste my time. With a lot of So I'm talking about you like you're not here, but Sal he's my kind of dry humor. He's fun. He's sarcastic, but he's also knowledgeable, and he's buying into lines that I have no direct experience with compared to him. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying with that is I'm happy to give you this amount of time because you have done so much for me. You just don't know it.
You humble me, sir.
So,
but I do appreciate the kind words. Now, I'm going to ask you to say the same nice things about your channel. Unless you'd rather me do that.
No. My channel tries to tell the truth, both positive and negative and ambivalent, about pop culture of the 70s through the early 90s, and also deal with issues within fandom, issues within the entertainment industry that other people are either afraid or unwilling to tackle. It's got me a lot of haters in the past, but it's also got me a lot of fans. And as when I say fans, it just came out that way. I mean supporters. I always have called you guys supporters of Retroblasting. You're not fans. You're a community. That fans word is in my head a lot because I'm always talking about issues in fandom. So apologies for that. But as Tony so astutely put it in a recent Analog Toys Patreon message, the haters are loud and vociferous on YouTube, but they usually constitute about 1% of an actual audience. So that was an encouraging stat that I heard today on Tony's message. So I've taken that to heart. And yeah, people end up not liking me. But guess what? Apparently, it's only 1% of people. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. So if you like honest and authentic stuff with no ambitions to chum up to the toy companies and get a seat at the fancy table, and you just want to talk to somebody who's been like you guys, a lifelong guy in the toy aisle, and buys all the stuff they review and everything like that, then you might enjoy Retroblasting if you aren't already watching it. So
yep, that's the way I see it is channels like Retroblasting and myself to some extent, though I would not say that I'm just like Retroblasting.
Oh, I would say so. You just have a different style.
But we have nothing really to gain. Like
Right.
we're trying to be like, hey, we're like you. This is what we have. This is what we paid for.
Mhm.
Where the people that got it for free are probably gonna have a different experience.
Yeah, and there was somebody on Tony's chat today in the comments on Patreon that made this really cool observation that I never considered before, where he said the reason that you get so much heat from smaller channels and just people in the comments is because somehow you've been doing all this differently at Retroblasting, paying for your stuff, not giving a crap about chumming up with the toy companies, not playing favorites, not being diplomatic about problems like if I had bought a HasLab Sentinel, I wouldn't have been. And in doing so, you've still managed to garner a successful audience. And,
Right.
It's taken me 9 years, but it's there and it's irrefutable. And he said, that's why you're going to keep getting heat, because people don't want to accept the fact that you're now too big to get knocked down.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. But what I told some friends of mine, and I'll tell you this and I'll tell the world this, is that channels like 2 Cents Toys, channels like Analog Toys, channels like All Things 80s, and Retroblasting as an extension, we're all just in the toy aisle. We're all just trying to have an authentic consumer-based voice from the perspective of the buyer on all of this stuff, whether it's action figures, ephemera, whatever it is. And if Retroblasting gets to 100K, I mean what I say, and I think Sal will back me up on that I'm not just blowing smoke, because he and I've known each other a long time. If Retroblasting gets to 100K, they really can't knock us down anymore. And when I say there's no chance at that point, I don't mean just for me. I mean for every single channel that has circled the wagons in this unofficial user-generated faux network that we've created. In other words, once you hit 100K, they know that it's over trying to get that channel knocked off. There's no way. But what they don't realize is it also means that Analog and 2 Cents and All Things 80s and all of those channels that have also said we want authentic opinions, they're now protected forever too. They ain't going anywhere either. So get ready.
That's right. I will adamantly and ardently defend Michael and Tony and Dean and Thomas and all of you from anything, because it's not just like, oh, they're my friends. It transcends all that. Like, of course, I value our friendship very deeply, but it's if we don't have our voices, then we're left with predatory business practices. That's
right.
what we're left
Exactly.
with.
Yeah. Which apparently the person that idiot a little while ago wanted me to apologize to and delete my video said loud and clear in the debate that predatory business practices towards buyers are great. They are a good thing. And I asked him to repeat that, and he did.
Greed
and he didn't back down from it.
Is good.
Yeah. So these are the reasons why I will not apologize to that man and people like him. They are exuberant in their predatory practices towards us as buyers in the toy aisle, and that is wrong. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, that's it. There's only room for one of us up here at a time, Michael. No. That was one of my fondest memories, going to Hyde Park. Seeing that play out in real time. I was like, oh, this really happens.
Right.
So, all right. Well, we've gone for a while. I wish and if it were up to me, I would just keep babbling on and on and on and on, because Lord knows. But at some point, I'll devolve into sounding like Boomhauer if I talk too long.
Dang old man, dang old predators, man, Hasbro and these, man, I'm broken dang old Sentinel, man.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I thank everyone for stopping by and hanging out with us tonight, especially on a Tuesday. This was a great turnout, and I thank everyone for taking their time and all that. Anyone who missed the stream or missed part of it, it stays public. It doesn't go unlisted. So, but looking forward to talking to Michael again, which will probably be
Mhm.
in the next 30 seconds after the stream's over, because we talk all the time anyway. But so I thank everyone for stopping by. We'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.